Matters of privilege and recognition of guests, the Honourable Premier.
Well, good morning, Mr. Speaker, to all of my colleagues. Welcome back for Friday morning at the Legislature. I do also want to welcome back our colleague from Summerside South Drive, who has had a much more exciting and rewarding week than most of us in here, I think, Mr. Speaker. So congratulations to Amber and all of your family. Welcome back. You were missed, so good to see you here. Most of my colleagues, or all of the colleagues, Mr. Speaker, were wearing purple ribbon here today for Purple Day, marked around the world to increase awareness for those with epilepsy. 1 in 100 people worldwide have epilepsy, Mr. Speaker, and I was touched to read the wonderful article in the Globe and Mail by Island writer and author Mo Duffy Cobb. She shared her experience of living with epilepsy, Mr. Speaker, and as someone who used to make a living sharing their words, I was envious and a little bit jealous of just how eloquently she was able to share that journey and to put such a whimsical and touching story on a difficult journey. So thanks to all of my colleagues and to Mo for sharing in that awareness. I also wanted to recognize, Mr. Speaker, the Dine and Save program implemented by the Department of Economic Growth, Culture and Tourism. Started on Sunday. It was to go until the end of March with the hopes of giving a little boost to those in what is a more quiet time of the year, Mr. Speaker, in the restaurant industry. And in 4 days, it's already fully subscribed. Over 26,000 meals, I think, have been served all across PEI, over 70 restaurants participating. Activity in those restaurants up on average about 75%, Mr. Speaker, and at the request of the association, and an announcement will come after a question period, I believe, but we will be extending that program, adding some more money to it, Mr. Speaker, because more and more Islanders want to share in it, and more restaurants want to sign up, Mr. Speaker, so we're working to do that, and it will continue. So really good story there. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I try not to mention my family in here very much. I think all of us in here know, as on the front lines of politics, that we take enough without having to bring our family in. But I have a bit of a proud dad moment here this morning. My daughter, Camden, almost 17, dropped her off today, and she successfully passed, has her G, is now able to drive. And I think taking her out to my friend and former colleague, the dentist, he remembers her the same way I do, and it's hard to believe she's there, but just she's worked hard. She's a good driver, so I'm proud of that. She's very studious, and just really proud of her, and I'll see less and less of her now, I know, Mr. Speaker, because she has a car and she's going to be on the road, but congratulations, Cam. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too would like to welcome my colleague from Summerside South Drive back to the Legislature. As the Premier said, an exciting week in his household, and the baby pictures have been shared around our office, and we're hoping very soon that Amber and the baby will be here to Speaker, there you go. We'll be here to say hi to everybody in the Legislature. Yeah, indeed, it is Purple Day today, and Canada is actually the only country in the world. It's awareness, epilepsy awareness is something that happens everywhere, but March the 26th it's only in Canada, following the Purple Day Act that was implemented, I think, back in 2012 or somewhere, that we're the only country that actually has a specific day, and it's today. And people who I haven't read Mo's article in the Globe and Mail, so I'm gonna go and look for that now, because I know many people with epilepsy, and they walk a difficult path. It's people with epilepsy while it can be controlled, and most people who have epilepsy, indeed it is controlled with medications, they suffer from higher rates of anxiety and depression. And there's still a stigma attached to having epilepsy. And Purple Day is a day there that we try to raise awareness, educate the public on exactly what epilepsy is, and hopefully to a certain extent to overcome that stigma that still exists. So Lovely to see people in the House today wearing ribbons, and I know the Minister will make a statement later on Purple Day, and I look forward to that. Tomorrow there's a couple of events happening, one here on the island and one global. The one here on the island is CD Saturday, which happens in Breadalbin. It's been going for several years now. Irene Novacek is the one who was the sort of catalyst to get that going. And they receive seeds from Vessie's wonderful island company, very generous island company. And during COVID, one of the things which has taken off is people growing their own vegetables and tending for their gardens, doing things like that. So it's a great event if you have an opportunity. It's on Saturday. I know the weather's not meant to be great Saturday, but if you can get out to Breadalbin, there will be a huge selection of seeds there, and they've already started some. There are onion sets and things like that as well. So thank you, Irene, for doing that. It's a great community event, and they raise funds as well. So good for Irene. And the global event that's happening tomorrow is that it is Earth Hour. To every March 27th. There's an hour set aside in the evening, started in Australia many years ago, and now it's become a global phenomenon where the lights are turned out. Essential lights, of course, are turned out at 8:30 p.m. local time. So it's absolutely symbolic. I understand that, but it's that 1 hour of lights out, the event that happens then, to me is a symbol of a much broader commitment to our Earth and to this planet and our connection to it. So I hope everybody has an opportunity to participate in Earth Hour tomorrow, and just that little reminder of the connectedness that we all have to this planet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's great to rise again today in the legislature. And I too would like to welcome my colleague back from Summerside South Drive. And he had a very proud week, and it's just amazing as we go through life. Here's one member having a new baby, and here's the Premier's daughter getting her driver's license. We're always proud of our children, and it's always good to be able to say that. Thank you. I'd like to raise today the recognition. March 26th is Epilepsy Day awareness. The day is designed to raise awareness and increase the public's knowledge of the neurological condition that affects about 50 million people worldwide. In 2008, Cassidy Megan of Nova Scotia launched Purple Day as a way to observe and commemorate Epilepsy Day awareness. As I look around the chamber at the purple clots and pins, it's clear her initiative has lasted many years into the future. While it appears the early spring weather won't be continuing into this weekend, I wish all members of the legislature and all islanders a very safe weekend. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Health and Wellness.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first, like previous ones here, I certainly want to pass my congratulations on to the member from Summerside South Drive and his wife Amber on the arrival of Harper. As a father of two daughters, I know that you're going to have a number of great memories, events going forward. Also, I'm sure you know, you're going to have a number of sleepless nights too. But anyway, my congratulations to the member from Summerside South Drive. As it's been mentioned here before, Mr. Speaker, today is Purple Day, a day of International Epilepsy Day. And I do look forward, as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition had referenced, to giving a minister's statement here a little later on this morning. As well, Mr. Speaker, I'd certainly like to give a shout out, wish everybody in the West Prince area and certainly in District 26, Albert and Bloomfield, all the best today and for a great weekend. As well, Mr. Speaker, there's a songwriter, musician, that I'm sure everybody in this legislature is very familiar with, and everybody right across the province. When you give the name Megan Blanchard, you realize how talented she is, how talented that so many islanders are right across the province. And Megan, who is, as we know, has been a winner of different ECMA awards and Music PEI awards, Megan has a great sense of humor, too. And I'm sure that a lot of ones in here would be very familiar with the Dixie Chicks song, Not Ready to Make Nice. Oh, it was back in the fall of November 2015, I believe, that Megan did a parody of that Dixie Chicks song. And the name of it was I'm Not Ready to Scrape Ice. So it certainly shows the great sense of humor. And just after she did that parody, she also, Mr. Speaker, got a shout out from the Dixie Chicks themselves. But with that, when I talk about Megan, she recently released a song of tribute and thanks to the healthcare workers in the western part of the province, Mr. Speaker. And that's what I would like to certainly thank Megan for, and thank the healthcare workers in West Prince. And if you'd indulge me, Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to read a few lines from the lyrics of this song, which Megan recently released. And the name of it is Just Like Family. And it goes, there's pride in our hearts for the work must be done, from the nurses to technicians, to the staff that clean the halls, from cooks to our technicians, to the ones who give their all. Helping those most in need, you can always count on me, just like family. So again, Mr. Speaker, I want to give a shout out to Megan for this initiative, and certainly as the Minister of Health, my thanks, my appreciation to the great frontline healthcare workers right across the province, but certainly in the western part of the province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Communities.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to everybody on Friday, and welcome everybody to District 19. I'm a little bit biased when I say I think I represent the greatest district in PEI. And I give a shout out to the 5 municipalities and the large unincorporated area that we have there. But I want to give a shout out this morning to 2 individuals, Anne Marie Shea and Megan Drummond, who brought forth an initiative with other members of the Community of Council in Kincora. And the daycare in Kincora now is up and running, and they shared some photographs yesterday, and I think that's a great accomplishment. But I want to give some credit to the former Minister of Education, Minister of Housing now, for his help in this, and also to the current Minister of Education, who will be hopefully joining me in the next very short while, and will be touring the facility. And it's just a great initiative by the community and the people, and that's one thing that makes me feel so good with that district is how doesn't matter where they live in the district, they come together and they support each other, and they do a great job, and I really appreciate that. So all the best.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, Brighton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise this morning to greet my constituents in District 13, as well as everyone else listening online today. Speaking about listening, a good friend of ours, Harley, moved to Nova Scotia. She has always been really interested in politics, and she's telling me that she still listens to the PEI legislature, and she does it when she's vacuuming. As I've said before, there are many advantages to online listening. We can now add vacuuming to the list. Personally, I like to listen to Beethoven when I vacuum, so just imagine that what we say here in the legislature is like music to somebody else's ears, right up there with Beethoven. So hi, Harley. If you're listening today, keep the volume on loud. I would also like to draw the attention to a resident of my District 13. We have many food establishments in my district, including the Superstore, for instance, and many smaller restaurants. One of my constituents is Chef John Pritchard, who started and ran Terre Rouge for a couple of years. He then switched to wedding catering, but that business completely disappeared with the COVID pandemic. His only business left was cooking lunch for a couple of local schools. John became concerned that the kids were not fed when school was closed, so he and his wife started providing kids with free food completely on their own, the policy that thankfully is now supported by the government. I really love when citizens take matters into their own hands and the actions then get followed by government. That's true grassroots democracy So thank you, John, for your efforts, and I urge you to support John by calling him next time you have a wedding in your family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Always a pleasure to rise in the legislature and welcome those watching from District 18, Rustico Emerald. I also want to recognize Irene Novacek and the great work she does with Seedy Saturday in the community of Bredelban. And it's at 2 p.m. this Saturday. They're looking for volunteers to help make the seed packets, but also they partner, as many municipalities do, with the library that is also in the community center. And so you can go and get those seeds for an entire week after Seedy Saturday by going to the library. And speaking to the community of Bredelban, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to recognize a couple of people who have just come off of the municipal board, and that's Clara Hupman and the great work she's done with many events in the community, but also Bev Fowler, who has just resigned as the CFO, and he's done some great work there. And finally, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of roads that need work this spring, particularly clay roads, but we're seeing some breakup. 'Tis the season after all, Mr. Speaker. It's been a real tough winter with freeze and thaw, so just ask constituents to be patient. I'm working with the Minister of Transportation to get things fixed up, and if you have road issues, you can text not just the road issue, but pictures. You can text in pictures, Mr. Speaker, to the Queens County Road Issues line is 902-200-6649. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thought I'd just rise and thank everyone who's been giving us congratulations on our beautiful new daughter and add a little bit of a flavor to her first day. There was her grandmother, who was the editor for the Journal for a very long time, and she knows a lot of political commentators within the realms. And they watched the proceedings here. I myself was a little busy at the time, but they said Harper is probably the most popular baby on the island today because everybody has welcomed her. Her name's in Hansard forever, right from her first day. So thank you to the House. She made quite a splash in the legislature on her first day. I'm excited to see the world she helped shape, Mr. Speaker. We may even see her sitting in Mr. Premier's seat someday. Thank you to all those who acknowledged her here, and especially to all those who reached out to congratulate my Amber, myself, and our cherished family. Thank you.
Honourable Members, at this time, we're going to take a short recess. There's a smell in the chamber that's affecting one of our members. honorable members, we'll resume with our member statements. And for first member statement would be Summerside Wilmot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, in a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court of Canada upheld the constitutionality of a federal price on carbon. It is staggering to think about the amount of taxpayer dollars some provincial governments have spent to try and hinder climate action, and I am so glad this government reconsidered and withdrew its intervener status for that case. I give the Premier credit for changing his mind on carbon tax. I know during the election the PCs took an opposing position, and sometimes in politics it is hard to say you've changed your mind, but I credit the Premier in large part for this change of position within his caucus, and I thank him for that. In the same vein, I was delighted to hear the third party recently endorsing the Green position on fee and dividend, where the money collected is returned in full to islanders, granted 3 years after their time in government negotiating a carbon tax that was significantly worse than the federal backstop, but I am still happy to hear the support for this approach. Now that the question of should we or shouldn't we has been settled, I hope the debate can transition to one on how a price on carbon should work. We need to be bold. Time is not on our side, but fighting climate change and fighting poverty can and must be done hand in hand or will fail. So I'd like to argue the importance of ensuring that all money collected from the carbon tax is returned directly to islanders. Not in programs some islanders will access or in infrastructure investments some islanders will use, but in the form of a check, so islanders with a large carbon footprint have an incentive to adapt, and islanders who cannot are not hurt by this decision. Mr. Speaker, we can tackle the climate crisis while helping islanders get ahead, but it will require brave leadership and a discussion on ideas based in fact. I look forward to seeing the conversation on carbon pricing shift. Islanders deserve nothing less. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Morell-Donagh, the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to highlight a recent addition to our province's protected lands, not to our province, but in the province, that happens to be in District 7. It's even more special as I and my family are lucky to live across the bay from Greenwich, and it's land that I look into as my landmarks during fishing season, Mr. Speaker. Prince Edward Island National Park at Greenwich is one of the most island's incredible scenic sites, and a new 405-acre expansion will be added to the park. The new 405-acre land acquisition will include forest, wetlands, and coastal dunes that are home to various at-risk and rare species, including the piping plover, the yellow-banded bumblebee, and the little brown bat. The Greenwich National Park was created to protect and preserve both cultural and natural resources found in the area that helped tell our story from our first Indigenous people living in the area till today. I'd like to thank the Government of Canada and my good friend Honourable Lawrence Macaulay for their work to secure this large piece of property. The conservation of this additionally ecologically significant land will also be a boost for UPI Climate Lab, now under construction in St. Peters. This expansion of the National Park in Greenwich will add to the protected lands in our province, which are important to support the biodiversity of our island for future generations of islanders. Acts like this are important reminders as we work to secure 7% of the lands in the province as protected lands. In the throne speech, the province committed to increasing our level of protected land to reach our goal of 7% with full intention of moving to 10%. I know this goal has been around for a while, Mr. Speaker, but I have spoken with the Minister of the Environment, Energy and Climate Action on the important work to expand protected land holdings in buffer zones and across the province, and I would challenge the Minister to take the expansion of the Greenwich National Park as inspiration to also lead by example in protecting more of our island lands. I know he has amazing plans to achieve his goals, and I look forward to his success. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown Belvedere.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In June 2019, this House debated and passed the motion creating a rental registry. The motion urged the government to establish a searchable, free and public rent registry that includes information on current and past rent. This information is critical for tenants to know if they need to take action on an illegal rent increase. But in the 16 months that followed, absolutely nothing happened. In February, our new Minister for Social Development and Housing suggested a study. A study does not help islanders forced to choose between food and rent. It does not return illegal rent increases to tenants or lower illegal rents. Every month, the rental registry has been delayed, has caused undue harm to people who most need our protection. The campaign My Old Apartment launched in February, fighting illegal rent increases in PEI with snail mail. It went viral locally, nationally, and internationally. Through simple, clear education on tenant rights and the gaps inherent in the current rental legislation, this social campaign has empowered tenants in PEI to help each other. There are currently at least 3 hearings scheduled with IRAC as a result. One tenant has been overcharged by $650 a month for more than 2 years, and this not only should have her rent reduced to the allowable level, but will be paid over $20,000 in the monies that she was charged illegally. Another tenant has been charged $245 more a month and is owed $5,600 back, as well as that reduction. This week, My Old Apartment established a searchable, free, and secure public rental registry that includes information on current and past rents. It's a crowdsourced registry of rents that tenants have paid for rental apartments in PEI. It was built in less than a month, entirely by volunteers, by IT professionals here in PEI. Tenants can pay it forward by documenting their current and past rent here, and future tenants can use that information to make sure they're being charged a legal rent. In the first 24 hours that that rental registry has been live, Mr. Speaker, over 340 rents were logged and at least 7 potentially illegal rent increases have been identified for follow-up. It works because tenants are using it. So please encourage your friends and neighbours to use this rental registry. Mr. Speaker, government has a choice. They can recognise that this crowdsourced grassroots solution is giving the proof of concept that the Minister has asked for, free of charge. Government could demonstrate their support by requesting IRAC cooperate with My Old Apartment and the rental registry and provide the rental data that IRAC has on file. Or government can continue to delay taking any meaningful action on PEI's housing crisis. Islanders have already taken developing a grassroots rental registry into their own hands. Now government must decide what role it wants to play. The choice is theirs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions by members, starting with response to questions taken as notice. No? For our first question, I'll call on the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. There's been a lot of talk recently about the mobile mental health crisis teams, and no doubt there will be more talk to come. But we can't forget that they are only a small part of a much bigger suite of services that have to be there to work in a coordinated fashion to manage both acute crises and also the longer-term goal for people with mental illness and addictions of helping them become well and to stay well. A question to the Minister of Health and Wellness. What established facilities and organizations do we have here on Prince Edward Island that are providing services to accomplish this longer-term goal, which is an essential part of the continuum of care for islanders with mental health and addictions problems?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Honourable Member for the question. Certainly, Mr. Speaker, as we've talked so many times in here about the mobile response units, and I have always used, on a regular basis, used the term partnership. With regard to the Honourable Member's question, certainly we have great partnerships with whether it's CMHA, some of its affiliates, such as the Hope Center Clubhouse in the western part of the province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. And one of those facilities that is providing this longer-term service for islanders is Lennon House, of course, in Rustico. And currently, they house 24 residents, and they have 10 full-time staff and 9 part-time staff. This is not a small organization. Lennon House only recently started receiving government funding, but already it's clear that they are providing an effective and a comprehensive service for islanders who are in recovery from mental health and addiction problems. Question to the Minister of Health and Wellness. What is the annual grant to this facility that is currently providing this critical component of an integrated and effective system? And will you pledge that this grant will become a multi-year commitment?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and again, thank the honourable member for the question. And I certainly want to state my appreciation as Minister for the great work that is done at Lennon House. Kudos to them, without a doubt. With regard to the funding, the exact amount, certainly, Mr. Speaker, when the Department and Health PEI's budget is brought forward onto the floor of the legislature, that will become quite evident. With regard to the honourable member's question, is it being, will I, as Minister, pledge that it will be ongoing? Yes, I will.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Big smile. Thank you, Minister, for that very unambiguous commitment to long-term funding for Lennon House. That's wonderful news. If I look at the budgetary handbook, not the little one, but the big guy, I find under the grants for health policy and programming with the Department of Health and Wellness, a budget line for the PEI Centre for Wellbeing. The operating grant for Lennon House is just less than $1 million, and for this new Centre of Wellbeing, it's $3 million. That's what's in the budget book. Question to the Minister of Health and Wellness. Given the confusion that continues to swirl around our mobile mental health crisis and the scramble of contradictions that it has become, I'd like to avoid the same thing happening here with the PEI Centre for Wellbeing. Can you tell us clearly what the PEI Centre for Wellbeing will be doing and who will be managing it?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I do appreciate the honourable member bringing this forward. I think you look at the name of the department, of my department, Health and Wellness, and then you look at what we are moving forward with here, the Centre for Mental Wellbeing. It certainly ties in extremely well. What we have said previously, Mr. Speaker, is yes, that it is going to take time to get this put together. We need to do it right, without a doubt, but it gives the opportunity for ones in the community to provide feedback, and also for us as a government, when we see that feedback, when the gaps are identified, with that $3 million commitment, Mr. Speaker, to provide funding, whether it's directly to some of our partners or potentially new partners, to make sure that those gaps are filled. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. Charlottetown Brighton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government has now operated nearly 2 years, continuing a federal provincial carbon pricing agreement made by the previous government. Originally claiming to save the environment with free driver's licenses, this government, to its credit, did change that, offering to spend the collected funds for active transportation projects instead. However, the bigger portion of the carbon tax was offset by lowering the provincial gas tax by a couple of cents. The effect was that our province used and is using millions of dollars to subsidize the use of gas, which had the exact opposite effect that the carbon tax was intended to achieve. So, question to the Premier. Do you intend to continue the practice of subsidizing gas?
The Honourable Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for the question, and yes, if you have the privilege at some point to come into government, you will inherit some of the sins of the current government, I'm sure, Mr. Speaker. We all do that. I think that the intention when the carbon structure was first implemented a couple of years ago was to worry more about an election as opposed to the environment, Mr. Speaker. We're different than that here. We are leaders. Our carbon throughout this process, even though the funds weren't directed necessarily to the exact place they should have been, in my estimation, and that's why we changed it. Our carbon has actually been reduced, Mr. Speaker. We're working on a new arrangement right now with the federal government that we hope will be in place by September. And as I've been saying in here in the legislature, the terms around this deal are much different than the last terms from the federal perspective, Mr. Speaker. There's less flexibility than was negotiated the last time. So I think the funds will be distributed to those who need it on a scaled basis, capped at a certain level, and we will be returning the money from carbon back to the people, Mr. Speaker, which I think is the intention of a carbon tax.
The honourable member from Charlottetown Brighton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the promising changes. The former government created rebates for home heating oil and propane. This government has continued these fossil fuel subsidies, which is completely contrary to ours and this government's net zero goals. Question to the Minister of Environment, Energy and Climate Action. When are you going to stop subsidizing the use of oil and propane?
The Honourable Minister of Environment, Energy and Climate Action.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So as the Premier has pointed out, we're at the end of the deal that the previous government had negotiated with Ottawa, which was basically just to avoid the backstop and very little more. So we've inherited this file and we're moving forward, and we're looking at a bunch of options, and we have a call with the Minister coming up towards the end of next week to have a further discussion on where we are. And has been noted in this House, we're not due now to sign until September because they pushed it out 6 months for us because no one was ready or everything. We weren't all on the same page yet, but I guess the honourable member can rest in comfort knowing that we will be having those discussions, and Ottawa is pushing us pretty heavy to do the things that you're asking for. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown Brighton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the answer. I just want to point out that whatever agreement you have with the feds, the actual provincial gas taxes, for instance, are totally in the ballpark of this government. The government's adoption of an ambitious net zero policy is, of course, very exciting to me. However, one of my past clients found little understanding or support for their net zero projects at Energy Efficiency PEI. Question to the Minister. When will the efficiency PEI policy and grants reflect your new net zero policy?
The Honourable Minister of Environment, Energy and Climate Action.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So it's a really good point. I think when we talked about it last fall, we said we were creating a plan. We're ready to put that out probably hopefully towards the end of May, kind of have a full plan, but we do have to have our programming reflective of it. There are several changes we need to make in the efficiency file to make that work. There's money that is needed to help accomplish that. I've had great discussions with the federal minister about our plan. He is certainly appears to be very excited about what we're saying we're going to do, and how adamant we are that we're going to accomplish it quicker than anybody else in Canada. And we're having other negotiations outside the carbon tax, how Ottawa could help us. So I think we need some extra help, but the honourable member is 100% right. Changes need to be made in that file to ensure that we can meet our goals. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown Brighton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm, of course, pleased that the net zero motion of 2019 has resulted in a new school being constructed to net zero standards. However, as far as I can determine, the IFP document only calls for net zero ready, not all the way to net zero. Crucially, they leave out the solar collector components. Question to the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. Please explain why solar collectors are omitted.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, presently with the projects moving forward the Transportation and Infrastructure is responsible for, we are targeting towards a net zero level. But, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of work to be done. And we're working very diligently within the department with experts in the field to ensure that our new construction, our new projects meet all necessary requirements to achieve net zero. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown Brighton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's indeed music to my ears. One of the key features of net zero buildings is that they pay for themselves. Net zero features can be financed outside the budget, as is the case with windmills. This is important because making all buildings net zero will require hundreds of millions of dollars each year. Question to the Minister of Environment, Energy and Climate Action. Have you explored alternative financing methods to facilitate the adoption of net zero standards for government and indeed all islanders?
The Honourable Minister of Environment, Energy and Climate Action.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So again, it's a very good question, and yeah, we're currently exploring that, and I know the honourable member, you were up in my office prior to the House open having a discussion, and it was a very enlightening discussion where you gave me some really good ideas that we're currently chasing from that discussion. So I think that yes, we are. I can't answer where it is right now because there's multi-parties on this side kind of working together to make some of those things happen, but it's an absolute that we offer alternative financing measures so that we can bring people along, because we can't tell them we're going to do this and force them to do it. We have to help them the best that we can to do it, and we have to show them the way. So I appreciate your help to date in the file, and I'm sure that you'll be able to offer much more as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Women offender beds have nearly doubled from 2018 to 2020. In 2020, we had 6,159 days, despite a provincial capacity for only 1,460 bed days per year. Question to the Minister of Justice and Public Safety. Why are we seeing such an alarming increase in numbers of women being incarcerated?
The Honourable Minister of Justice, Public Safety and Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and as you're well aware, we are very conscious of that, Mr. Speaker, and we have to take a therapeutic look at all our justice initiatives moving forward, and there's always a change in demographics, Mr. Speaker, and this might be one of them, but we are in the process of building the women's unit right now, which I wish we didn't have to incarcerate anyone, Mr. Speaker, but these people need the supports, they need the help, and they need the proper facilities to do that. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, we are getting a new facility, and it's great that we're getting a new facility, but is building a new structure really going to be a solution to this? With such high incarceration rates, the new building is going to be over capacity before it's completed. Question to the Minister. How long will it be before the new facility is over capacity again?
The Honourable Minister of Justice, Public Safety and the Attorney General.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we have to work towards the national trend turning the other way, Mr. Speaker. We have to do more. We have to look at our programs, and it's all about community well-being, and the women offenders need our full support, Mr. Speaker, so we don't have to incarcerate women. We have to take a different approach. We have to take a leadership role in this, Mr. Speaker, and our Department of Justice and Public Safety is willing to do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I don't think women have suddenly become more criminal over the past few years. So what's changed? I can only assume that these statistics are alarming enough for you and your department to be researching the underlying causes. Question to the Minister. What can you tell us about the women who are being incarcerated, and what are the root causes or societal issues that are leading to this?
The Honourable Minister of Justice, Public Safety and the Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think Prince Edward Island is immune from any of the trends that are happening across the country, Mr. Speaker. It's disturbing, and there's many different causes, Mr. Speaker, but we have to ensure that there's intervention programs available to all women, Mr. Speaker, and women incarcerated and women in the justice system, Mr. Speaker, so we can have the proper supports for them going forward, and we'll commit to working with and supporting the team to do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, PEI's fallen well outside those national trends, Minister, so we have to have a look at what's happening here in PEI in particular. So also, from a child's perspective, this would represent an increase in mothers behind bars. A question to the Minister. How are you supporting the children of these incarcerated parents?
The Honourable Minister of Justice, Public Safety and Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And these women have the full support. There's programs available, Mr. Speaker, to support mothers that are incarcerated, Mr. Speaker, and we will ensure that that support is even greater when we have the new facility, Mr. Speaker, that they can have as close to an intimate relationship with their children as possible, Mr. Speaker. That's the key here, and it's not just justice, Mr. Speaker. It's across the island. We need a community well-being, Mr. Speaker, and that's our focus. Thank you.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, Belvedere.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2019, the PC election platform committed to developing a women's health strategy that addresses the diverse needs of island women. It was even included in the Minister of Health and Wellness's mandate letter. Question to the Minister of Health: when will islanders finally get a comprehensive and coordinated women's health strategy?
Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I think that there have already been a number of initiatives that have been taken with regard to a women's health strategy. One example of that I would put out is one that we had spoke about here the other day, Mr. Speaker, the increase in assistance under fertility programs, Mr. Speaker, and that is just one example. Thank you.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, Belvedere.
Perhaps we need to define what strategy means, because individual initiatives are not a strategy. Also referenced in the platform and the mandate letter was a $5 million fund for women's health that is yet to be realised. We've seen some funding announcements for random projects, but overall women's health seems to be really low on the priority list for this government. Question to the Minister of Health: why aren't women's health initiatives, programmes and services an immediate concern?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I would have to say, you know, that when we bring the budget forward, certainly there's a number of initiatives right across the board, and some of them will be targeted at, at women's health without a doubt. I think that we have to remember too, though, Mr. Speaker, that there's so many services that are provided right across government, but specifically with regard to programs through health and wellness, through health PEI, that do they take in the whole population? Absolutely. But they also provide tremendous services for women of this province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, Belvedere.
We've seen a pattern with this government of making funding commitments along with splashy press releases, but then not actually following through. Midwifery, Mr. Speaker, was supposed to be well on its way. In fact, it's been promised every year. It seems, based on the current budget, midwifery hasn't progressed at all. Question to the Minister of Health: what confidence should women in PEI have that this time midwifery will actually, finally be implemented and not just announced again?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And it is, I'm not going to stand here and say that the service is going to be available on an exact date. We do have a steering committee that is working diligently to get the service up and going, Mr. Speaker. As part of that steering committee, there is an individual from Newfoundland who is very involved in it. That individual has worked previously, Mr. Speaker, in getting such programs up in other jurisdictions. That individual is a trained midwife. We have to, at the end of the day, though, Mr. Speaker, as I've said in other programs, we are committed to it. We have to make sure that it is done right and that it is done safely, Mr. Speaker. And certainly there's other aspects that I don't have time for here, obviously, but I would be happy to sit down with the member. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, Brighton.
A famous author once said, "I love the sound of deadlines, especially as they whiz on by." So it feels like, I've remember the previous Minister of Health telling us about working with the consultant from Newfoundland, and that was probably about a year ago, Mr. Speaker. The good news is that this government has a minister dedicated to advocating on behalf of women and vocalising their concerns at the cabinet table. Question to the Minister for the Status of Women: what conversations have you and your department had with the Minister of Health to ensure that women on PEI get the health care they need, services that have been overpromised and underdelivered?
The honourable Minister responsible for the Status of Women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm really grateful that the member opposite decided to ask me this question. Mr. Speaker, in my role as Minister responsible for the status of women, I have never once heard from the member opposite regarding her concerns around women's health, so I am really grateful that she has taken this opportunity to ask these questions publicly. Mr. Speaker, what our government is committed to is action, Mr. Speaker, and that's my priority as the Minister responsible for the status of women. Actually, if the member across wants to look at my calendar from about 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Health and Wellness and I, as well as the Director of the Interministerial Women's Secretariat and his Assistant Deputy Minister, we all met. We met to discuss all of these concerns. The health, the women and gender diverse islanders health strategy was discussed, fertility support programs. Mr. Speaker, midwifery, all of these matters are so important to island women, and I continue to be a strong advocate for them. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, West Royalty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is often said that government can be judged by how it treats its most vulnerable citizens. Islanders suffering from dementia often experience impairments to their memories, communication, and thinking, and for those reasons, lack of voice and advocate for themselves on important issues. Following the government's decision to empty Unit 9 in the spring, it was then decided dementia patients would be placed in the Unit 9 facility while awaiting long-term care placements. A question to the Minister of Health. Do you think Unit 9, an area specialized for psychiatric care, is a suitable location for these dementia patients to reside?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there were a number of changes that were made when we entered into this period of pandemic. We did not know what was coming forward at that point in time. We took directions. Certainly the previous Minister of Health was in a position and needed to take and did take and listen, as our whole government has, with regard to the recommendations from CPHO. We had to make sure that there were spaces available. We did not know that we'd be in the great position that we are right now, Mr. Speaker, of not having any hospital admissions as a result of the pandemic. But, Mr. Speaker, we did have to be prepared at that point in time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, West Royalty.
Well, that speaks to the crisis, but it doesn't speak, it's been a year since that time. Okay, and there's still dementia patients there, and you're doing nothing about it. We know only a thin curtain separates the section used by dementia patients from the section used by psychiatric care. I've spoken with families who have expressed concern regarding the hygiene standards being maintained for vulnerable dementia patients, robbing them of the dignity they deserve. We also are told that no plan programming for dementia patients at this Unit 9 facility, something specialized dementia care facilities would contain. Mr. Speaker, these families are suffering in silence. Question to the Minister. Do these conditions sound acceptable to you, and what will you do to address them now?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I do appreciate and I share the concerns. We have to be there for all islanders. Certainly we have to be there for the most vulnerable islanders as well. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I met with community care facility that is looking at new programs that are going to help those in the early stages of dementia, Mr. Speaker. We continue to work with the Alzheimer's Society, for example, Mr. Speaker, provide funding to them for programs such as the First Link program that is going to be expanded across the province of PEI, a program that is only available here in the greater Charlottetown area presently. It needs to be available to all islanders, and that's what our government is about, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that programming that all islanders are looked after. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, West Royalty, your second supplementary.
Yeah, and those people are doing great work, and the Alzheimer's Society is doing great work, but these patients are under your watch, and they're not getting the care they deserve. So, Minister, you have to address this issue. Mr. Speaker, it appears government has no plan for dementia patients in PEI, and with a progressively aging population, this is extremely concerning. We are told that there are waiting placements in long-term care, but our system currently doesn't have the available beds to send them to. Families tell me the only way these patients are expected to get out of the Unit 9 facility is if someone passes away in a long-term care facility, which is not a viable solution. A question to the Minister of Health. How many new long-term care beds will your government make operational in 2021, and where will they be located?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, certainly, and again, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Certainly, it is a challenge because there's so many parts that have to be addressed as we go forward on this. Mr. Speaker, I've had discussions with community care facilities that also provide long-term care. One of the challenges that they have, Mr. Speaker, is to be able to recruit staff. So it's a much greater picture, and I do agree, and I do thank the honourable member for bringing this forward. But we have to have programs to increase our nursing complement, for example, Mr. Speaker. And I have spoke here in the legislature over the last few days with regard to that. We could build X number of facilities, additional beds. If we can't staff them, Mr. Speaker, then what is the point of doing that? We have to work collaboratively. We have to look what has to be done and then move forward to get the job done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, West Royalty.
Well, I'll move on to something else, and you're outlining your own crisis. So I'd get busy.
Crisis.
Question.
One solution government has explored for dementia patients was to take them from Unit 9 and put them into Prince Edward Home. Currently, all but 3 wings in Prince Edward Home are being used for dementia patients, totaling approximately 72 inpatient beds. While this facility is far better equipped to handle dementia patients than Unit 9, the influx of dementia patients has had an impact on services previously offered at PE Home. Question to the Minister. What are your plans for PE Home moving into the future? Will it become a dementia patient-focused facility?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I would reiterate just that there's a lot of challenges that we do have to work collaboratively, work together on. Realize what those challenges are, how we address them. A number of them certainly were inherited, without a doubt. We don't solve these in overnight, Mr. Speaker, but with regard to the Prince Edward Home, restorative clients typically were discharged home there. There were 12 individuals from hospital needing dementia care were transferred, yes, Mr. Speaker, to Prince Edward Home. We do need restorative care, though, and Mr. Speaker, plans continue to reestablish a build upon we know restorative is a system gap, and staff are working on that as we speak. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, West Royalty.
Well, you call it a system gap, but I call it a crisis. Restorative care is incredibly important, and you outline that, but we're not doing anything for it. We're down 12 beds. We're up 12 beds in dementia. It's where are we looking at this crisis from? And Minister, this falls on your heels. We know restorative care wing at PEA has been basically gutted and currently filled with dementia patients. While I fully support providing dementia patients with a better facility, we must also maintain the important restorative care services. And the mandate and culture of PE Home was designed to provide just that. Question to the Minister of Health. Will the restorative care wing be returning to Prince Edward Home, or are the plans to establish a new one elsewhere?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well,
Minister?
yes. So, as I said in my previous answer, Mr. Speaker, certainly the plans are there to reestablish and build upon the restorative care that was offered there. It does take time. Like the honourable member, he has referred to me as the junior minister previously. I'll refer to him as the junior member of the third party. I know that he was not part of the previous administration that dropped the ball on a number of things. So, you know, I'm not going to call him accountable or hold him accountable for that. But Mr. Speaker, we are moving forward on so many initiatives. For example, the mental health campus, mobile crisis response, and we will be moving and are moving forward with regard to restorative care. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member member from Charlottetown West Brody, your second supplementary.
This government constantly remains interested but not committed to anything. And this issue can't mess it up. This is so important, Minister. It's concerning me that government is being reactive instead of proactive on this critical issue. Despite the absence of any clear plan and issue for restorative care, this government has indicated they will enhance and expand programming. The throne speech was quoted as saying, our restorative care program will be expanded and enhanced. Okay, but it seems we are moving in the opposite direction. A lack of government planning is having a negative impact on Islander. Question to the minister, how many new restorative care beds will your government make operational in 2021, and where will they be located?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not sure if a junior member has been so focused on the notes that were right in front of him that he wasn't listening to the answers that I gave in 2 or 3 of the his previous questions. Listen. Like it's not a simple matter, and the honourable member knows that. We've had great discussions, and I'll be honest, I do have a great respect for the member, I really do. But he appreciates, I know he does, that it's not just one piece of a puzzle, but you have to have all of the pieces to put together in order to provide these services, whether it's restorative care, whether it's long-term care, whether it's acute care, whether it's primary care, Mr. Speaker. And those are the different pieces of the puzzle when you look at the throne speech, when you do look, Mr. Speaker, at the budget that we are moving forward. And it's not the word of interested, it's the word action that we are taking, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today my question is about doctor shortages on PEI, and I'd just like to state before I start that there's been 2 ministers in this government, and it's been 2 years since they've been in government. In the last few weeks, the Third Party Caucus has heard from many Islanders expressing concerns surrounding the Premier's comments on access to doctors. They felt the comments gave the impression that government will no longer strive for a goal of a doctor for every Islander. Instead of a doctor for every Islander, the Premier is now promoting medical communities, which we still have few details about. Question to the Minister of Health. How many Islanders will come off the patient registry in 2021 as a result of these new medical communities?
The Honourable Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, since he extensively referenced me in the preamble, I feel the question is directed at me, even if he doesn't want to hear from me on it, Mr. Speaker. I would say what we've been saying all along, Mr. Speaker, is that one government for 11 years was comfortable promising something that could never, ever, 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 ever be done, Mr. Speaker. And they can't serve Islanders with false promises, Mr. Speaker. People need health care. People need access to health care as close to home as they can possibly get it, Mr. Speaker. And we have a tremendously diverse system of health delivery with so many wonderful professionals that need to be accessed, Mr. Speaker, to offer that care. At the end of every part of this care will be a family doctor, Mr. Speaker. We have recruited, as many other governments have, more doctors in the history of PEI. We have, Mr. Speaker. We have. But it's this antiquated, archaic, partisan thinking, Mr. Speaker, that has gotten us to this situation, and we're sick and tired of it over here. We're focused on the patient, Mr. Speaker, and that's what we're going to do. We're listening to professionals, we're working with those who deliver the service, and we care only about delivering health service for Islanders when they need it, Mr. Speaker, by everybody in health who can offer it.
The Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know the Premier doesn't like it when I quote percentages and numbers, but since he stood up here and answered that question, I will quote some figures. While we should always explore future solutions, we need to equally prioritize addressing problems that exist today. As it currently stands, 10.3% of the island population is on the patient registry. Comparatively, our neighbouring provinces are not experiencing such high numbers. 6.1% in Nova Scotia of their population is on their patient registry, and 5.7% of New Brunswick's population is on their patient registry. So we are in a much more difficult situation than our fellow maritime provinces. Question to the Minister of Health. Why is PEI currently lagging behind our neighbouring provinces in getting citizens connected to family doctors?
The Honorable Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's storytelling, I guess, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes I guess the facts don't matter, but you quote Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker, they do collaborative care. This is what we're talking about, Mr. Speaker. They do a better job. They're doing a better job than we do, Mr. Speaker, because they've opened their mind and their eyes to the future, Mr. Speaker. They're not stuck in the archaic, antiquated, partisan view, Mr. Speaker, that politics trumps all. That's not how they're doing it, Mr. Speaker. They're focusing, heaven forbid, Mr. Speaker, on the patient. Mr. Speaker, they're trying to give the patient who needs health care the health care they deserve and as adequately and professionally and as close as possible to their home, Mr. Speaker. I think we should follow that lead, Mr. Speaker, absolutely. And hopefully in a couple of years' time we can stand up here and say, guess what, we're doing better than all of them, Mr. Speaker, but we have to open our eyes to the future and to the realities of where we're at.
The Honorable Leader of the Third Party, your second supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, 2 years has gone by, and he's speaking about 2 years into the future. Well, that doesn't help somebody right now that needs a doctor. When you compare the population percentages of the maritime provinces, it's clear PEI is facing challenges that Nova Scotia and New Brunswick are not. As it currently stands, our patient registry continues to rise, and I mean it's rising drastically, with no clear plans for how we are and will reverse that trend. In an effort to increase recruitment, government has contracted the Medical Society to conduct Doctors Recruiting Doctors campaign. A question to the Minister of Health. How many doctors have you recruited to PEI by the Medical Society since signing the contract with them last fall?
The Honorable Premier.
Speaker, I guess the philosophy that the leader of the third party and his party struggle with, Mr. Speaker, is that this antiquated old-time belief that a doctor has to give you service, Mr. Speaker, to give you health service. And that is what we're moving away from. We have nurse practitioners, we have RNs, we have social workers, we have a bevy of services across this province, Mr. Speaker, that islanders need access to. And that used to be, I represent an area where Dr. Kent Ellis, Mr. Speaker, used to go and do door-to-door health care delivery, Mr. Speaker, but that is the past. We have to move beyond the past, Mr. Speaker. So yes, we need to have doctors recruiting doctors, Mr. Speaker. That's a very evolutionary piece of business that I can't believe it took 11 years to get done, Mr. Speaker. But yes, we're doing it. We're going to help nurses to recruit nurses, Mr. Speaker. Anybody who can recruit healthcare professionals to Prince Edward Island, I want to work with them because we need them, Mr. Speaker. But we have to change the delivery, and one of the key components of recruiting doctors, Mr. Speaker, is to listen to those who want to be here and they want to work in a collaborative practice. They want to get out of the antiquated old-time thinking that has held us back for too long.
The Honourable Member for Montague-Kilmuir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Kings County Memorial Hospital emergency room is only open 12 hours a day. And it's something that the residents of Eastern PEI become acquainted with, that if it's after 8 p.m. that you have to drive to Charlottetown for emergency services. The question to the Minister of Health, do the residents of Eastern PEI deserve the same emergency room services as those in the rest of PEI?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first of all, Mr. Speaker, I would like to give my thanks to the Premier for giving me a little break on the legs here for a couple of minutes. Certainly appreciated that. Avenues right across the board, Mr. Speaker, whether it's North Cape to East Point. Yes, they deserve healthcare services. Are we going to be able to deliver the same services that are provided at Queen Elizabeth, at Western Hospital, or at Kings County? No, we're not. I do appreciate, though, where the member is coming from with regard to 12 hours, and it was an initiative that was put in at Western Hospital of a collaborative emergency center. And I'll be honest, Mr. Speaker, I would be happy to have that conversation with the member. I know the passion that he has for Kings County Memorial Hospital, and I want to work with that member for rural health care. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Montague-Kilmuir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we completely realize that, you know, we can't have all the services in Kings County that are offered at the QEH or the Prince County Hospital, but I think we do deserve a 24/7 emergency room, just as Western Hospital has. Mr. Speaker, in a PC Party press release in 2018, we said this is yet another downgrading of emergency department services to the residents of Eastern PEI. A question to the Minister of Health. When can residents of Eastern PEI expect to see the emergency department at KCMH open 24/7?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
So, yeah, it's interesting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And once again, I'll go back, though, to Mr. Speaker, back to the point of the comparison of Western Hospital and Kings County Memorial Hospital, Mr. Speaker. And I think that, you know, to a very large extent, that both of these great facilities in our rural communities that I am completely committed to, contrary to what the member from Tignish Palmer Road may have insinuated, which was completely off base. But anyway, no, that's a discussion for another day, without a doubt, Mr. Speaker. But yes, I want to work with the member, see what we can do there, and let's work together. We're both very interested in rural health care, without a doubt. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member from Monaco-Kilmore, your second supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know there was talks of a master plan for the Kings County Memorial Hospital. I'm not even aware of it. I found out about it through the town of Three Rivers. They never even bothered to ask what the local MLA might think. Minister, we've been in government now nearly 2 years. You know, it's not something that I expect that we would, you know, we can turn that around that quickly, but whether it's the CEC model or something for a 24/7 emergency room, the former government reduced the hours. People are becoming accustomed to just having it open for 12 hours a day, even to the point now
Question?
they rarely talk about it because they're just so used to it, but I think they deserve more. Minister, will you commit today to opening the Kings County Memorial Hospital 24/7 in the emergency room so that we can be treated equitable just like the rest of PEI?
Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'll reiterate once again that I am very interested in having that conversation with the honourable member, look at what different programming that we might be able to utilize there, whether it is similar to the Collaborative Emergency Centre that is in place at Western Hospital, if there's other models. We look at how we're going to deliver primary care as we go forward. We always have to be open to new ideas, new direction. But, Mr. Speaker, I will say this in closing, that at the end of the day, as long as I'm in this chair and as long as I am the MLA for District 26, Albert and Bloomfield, that Western Hospital and Kings County Memorial Hospital will remain open and remain operational. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown Belvedere, final question.
Always got 2 out of 3, but you're not getting the third one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government has repeatedly announced exciting programs and services for island women. The third option, the 1,000 First Days, Women's Health Strategy, midwifery, contraception via pharmacists, period poverty, not just in schools, sexual health curriculum, economic development programs, rural supports, and then done absolutely nothing. It is in the mandate letter and direct responsibility of the minister responsible for the status of women to lead efforts to develop impactful programming and services that benefit all island women. Leadership does not mean that you wait until the official opposition asks you about it. And announcements do not help anyone when there is no action attached to it. For years, the only time status of women ever popped up in anybody's news feeds was when they were awarding the Interministerial Women's Secretariat grants. Question to the Minister for the Status of Women. How can island women trust you and your colleagues to work on their behalf when you've repeatedly failed to prioritise any of these critical services and programmes that are part of your mandate?
The Honourable Minister responsible for the status of women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Honourable Member, for the question. Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, we were discussing a motion, and I poured my heart and soul out to this House and described my miscarriage that I had back in 2017. Late last year, I had put some messaging out on social media regarding the miscarriage, and it was amazing how many women had actually reached out to me prior to that to discuss their concerns around fertilities. They're couples who were stressing, who were struggling. Mr. Speaker, January of this year, we announced a fertility support program for island women, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ever since I was elected, from the moment I was elected, all I have done is support women, island women, and make sure that their voices are brought to the cabinet table with my colleagues. As I had mentioned in the previous line of questioning, 2 weeks ago, I sat down with the Minister of Health and Wellness.
Answer.
Mr. Speaker, conversation, it's a two-way dialogue. It's not about tweeting. It's not about putting me down. That's all the honourable member has done to me since I've been elected in this seat. So, honourable member, if you have questions, if you have concerns, please bring them forward. Please send me an email. Please give me a phone call. Please don't just incessantly tweet negative comments about me online. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
End of question period. Statements by ministers. The Honourable Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our seniors have shaped the island that we know and love. Providing support to seniors as they age both in their homes and in care is the main goal of the Office of Seniors under Social Development and Housing. The Senior Secretariat is an advisory group that provides policy and program advice to government and other organizations to improve the quality of life for seniors. It acts as a link between seniors and government and community-based programs. And each year, Mr. Speaker, the Secretariat provides grants to organizations dedicated to supporting seniors. In 2020, the Secretariat provided just under $55,000 in grants to 29 community groups for projects and activities designed to improve the quality of life of older adults. In 2020, Mr. Speaker, the Secretariat received a record number of applications to fund community projects despite the pandemic. These projects promote healthy aging and active living, social inclusion, age-friendly communities, aging in place, and financial safety and security. Mr. Speaker, some examples of these projects include funding to the PEI Symphony Orchestra to provide music in PEI seniors' homes, the Hearing PEI Association to support aging well with hearing loss, and the Evangeline Consultative Group, who is working to gather information about the impact the pandemic is having on seniors. I'm pleased to announce today, Mr. Speaker, that government will be doubling funding for grants from the Senior Secretariat to $114,000. This additional funding will help to support more community groups promoting aging and active living and allow existing groups to build onto their projects and programs. Our seniors have and continue to be leaders in our communities across the province. The health and well-being of our seniors affects the health and well-being of all islanders, as we all have a senior in our lives that we know and love. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown Belvedere.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for this announcement. We know that the funding level for the community, the grant line for the Senior Secretariat, had remained static for a number of years. So it's really good to not only see an increase, but to see such a significant increase. It's always difficult when you're on the application end of asking for project-based funding, knowing that there is a limited amount, because it means that it's competitive, and it's really challenging. You know, when you have a number of applications come in, you have to be able to choose who gets funded and what gets funded. So, you know, for any community group that needs to apply for funding, when you know that there's more there on the table and it means that more potential community-based projects can go, then that's a really, really great place to be. I'm also looking forward to hearing from the Minister when we get to the estimates about what else is being done to support seniors in terms of their place at the table from a decision-making basis, because we know, you know, as programs and services are rolled out, we need to make sure that they're being done from the lens and the voice of those that need them the most. And the Secretariat, as it is with the Interministerial Women's Secretariat, has a really important role to play in that in terms of ensuring that voice is there. So thank you for this announcement today, Minister, and I look forward to hearing further on what's happening to support seniors in PEI.
The Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Mr. Speaker, and I too would like to thank the Minister for this great announcement. It's great to see the funding increase, and thank the Senior Secretariat for all the great work that they do. You know, it's an important office here promoting policies and geared to helping seniors. But, Mr. Speaker, we must always strive to do better. Mr. Speaker, the creation of an Office of the Seniors Advocate would only serve to further protect our senior population here on PEI. An Office of the Seniors Advocate modeled after the British Columbia model will analyze senior services and issues in PEI and make recommendations to government and services provided to address systematic issues facing our aging population. This is why I look forward to debating my bill entitled Seniors Advocate Act, which will establish the Office of Seniors Advocate in this province, as we are the only one province in the country that does not have one. And this is not to take away from any other Secretariat or any other office. This is just to help out and make things better for our seniors. Mr. Speaker, Island seniors must be protected at any cost, and I appreciate the Minister's words. His actions will speak louder when it comes to the time to debate this bill. The only question will be, do you support increasing the supports and protections our seniors in our province deserve? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize that this day is Purple Day in support of those living with epilepsy, and March is Epilepsy Awareness Month. Mr. Speaker, approximately 65 million people worldwide live with epilepsy, a neurological disorder of the central nervous system, specifically of the brain. Mr. Speaker, that means 1 out of every 100 people are estimated to have epilepsy. Mr. Speaker, people living with epilepsy often experience recurrent seizures, which can impact their daily living and their well-being. A national survey, The Impact of Epilepsy on Canadians, asked respondents to identify the daily challenges of living with epilepsy beyond seizures themselves. The top 3 challenges identified were lack of independence, including not being able to drive, negative impact on social life, and thirdly, stigma related to epilepsy and other people's lack of awareness about the condition. Mr. Speaker, our society often discriminates or creates obstacles for people living with medical issues, especially for those with disorders that are misunderstood by others due to a lack of information or knowledge about the condition. Mr. Speaker, one of the best ways to show our support is to learn more about epilepsy. Increasing awareness and advocating for patients and their families is an important step for improving the quality of lives of those living with epilepsy. Mr. Speaker, in 2008, a 9-year-old named Cassidy Megan created the idea of Purple Day, motivated by her own struggles with epilepsy. Cassidy's goal is to get people talking about epilepsy, to help in an effort to dispel myths, and to remind those who experience seizures that they are not alone. Mr. Speaker, the Epilepsy Association of the Maritimes helped develop Cassidy's idea, which is now known as Purple Day. And again, the Epilepsy Association of the Maritimes does a wonderful job of educating and supporting Atlantic Canadians with epilepsy, and by supporting their families as well, Mr. Speaker. Today, we wear purple to raise awareness and show our support for people living with epilepsy. Mr. Speaker, I encourage all Islanders to join in on the conversation on International Epilepsy Day and during Epilepsy Awareness Month to learn more and help end the stigma related to this medical condition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Tyne Valley Sherbrooke, the Opposition Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this year on Purple Day, there's a national initiative to help create even more awareness across Canada and to help bring Canadians living with epilepsy, their families, friends, and communities together. Tonight across Canada, Canadian landmarks are being lit up in purple and will be live streamed from locations across the country on Facebook. So that's something I encourage everyone to check out. As the Minister mentioned, epilepsy affects 1 in 100 Canadians. And epilepsy, Mr. Speaker, does not discriminate. It affects people of all ages, genders, and ethnicities. Anyone can develop epilepsy at any time in their life. We know that living with epilepsy can result in many challenges, and people with epilepsy can experience depression and anxiety more frequently than individuals without epilepsy. It doesn't have to result, though, in an inability to live a full and rewarding life. Providing supports for the mental well-being of individuals living with epilepsy is critical to their overall health and something that we need to always keep in mind. One of the most difficult challenges that people with epilepsy face is stigma associated with epilepsy. One of the best ways to show your support is to learn more about epilepsy and what it means to be living with it. So today I urge everyone in this house and everyone watching from home to visit purpleday.org to learn more about epilepsy and what we can all do to support those living with epilepsy on PEI. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Larry-Inverness, third-party whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And epilepsy affects hundreds of islanders, and it is often regarded as a debilitating disease that forces individuals into a bubble where they are forced to be treated as fragile members of our society. But, Mr. Speaker, World Purple Day does help raise awareness that those suffering with epilepsy are just like you and I, Mr. Speaker, and they deserve to be treated no differently than anyone else. And when I took the opportunity to find out about this, I don't have much of a wardrobe that has purple on it, but I did decide to ditch the red for today and go with the purple. But, Mr. Speaker, also this awareness has allowed me the opportunity to find out that there are many people that are living successful lives while managing their seizures caused by epilepsy. And one that comes to mind, and everybody knows I collect records and I'm into music, but Canadian singer-songwriter Neil Young has had epilepsy, and many would know him. He's famous for many songs, but The Heart of Gold was one of his songs. But I do have a number of his albums, Comes a Time and Everybody's Rockin' and Live Rust, Mr. Speaker. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is that he did write a specific song about epilepsy, and it's a song called Waging Heavy Peace. So I think it's an opportunity when we have days like this to find out a little bit more about some of these people. And another one that famous person that has epilepsy is Rick Harrison. And Rick Harrison, I watch the show a lot. It's called Pawn Stars, Mr. Speaker. And I do like some of the history and the artifacts that get brought in and the stories behind that. And it's a show I really enjoy watching. But all of this is to outline that people suffering with neurological disorders are able to live full lives, Mr. Speaker, and we must do everything we can to support them and treat them as equal members of our society. Thank you.
End of minister's statements. Presenting and receiving petitions. Tabling of documents. The Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to table documents that I referenced and cited during question period regarding neighbouring provinces' patient registries, and I move second by the Honourable Member from Larry-Inverness that
Shall it carry?
now tabled.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown West Royalty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By leave of the House, I beg leave to table recommendations regarding best practices for dementia care. And I move seconded by the Leader of the Third Party that the said document now received and do lie on the table.
Shall it carry?
And Mr. Speaker, I beg leave of the House to table written questions to the Department of Health and Wellness, providing a breakdown of age groups currently on the patient registry, and I move seconded by O'Leary-Inverness.
Shall it carry? The Honourable Member from Cornwall Meadowbanks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By leave of the House, I beg leave to table written questions pertaining to government's negotiations of a new carbon deal and revenues from the carbon levies, and I move seconded by the Leader of the Third Party. Question 1, please provide a list of all PEI groups consulted in the development of a new carbon agreement with Ottawa between October 1st, 2020 and now. And question 2 is please provide a thorough breakdown of anticipated sources of the $35 million in revenue from carbon levies estimated by government's 2021-22 in the 2021 operating budget.
Shall it carry?
Carry.
The Honourable Member from Larry-Inverness.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, by leave of this House, I beg leave to table written questions pertaining to vehicles turned away at the bridge and the costs incurred by the province, Mr. Speaker. And I move second by the member for Tignish Palmer Road that the said document be now received and do lie on the table.
Shall it carry? I miss anyone? Reports by committees. The honourable member from Mermaid Stratford, the opposition House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the honourable member from Montague-Kilmuir, that the report of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, tabled on March 25th, 2021, be adopted. Mr. Speaker, your committee met 5 times since the last sitting of the House and have come up with 3 recommendations that I'll share with the House. Recommendation number 1, your committee recommends the Liquor Control Commission and government continue the necessary work toward fully modernizing the Liquor Control Act. Recommendation number 2, your committee recommends that government conduct further review of best practices in procurement with the aim of improving our provincial procurement system, legislating procurement of services, not just goods, warrants particular consideration. And recommendation number 3, your committee again requests that government respond to this report and its previous 3 reports. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there anyone that would like to speak to the report? Shall the report carry?
Carry.
Introduction of government bills. No. Government motions. Orders of the day, government. The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, second by the Minister of Social Development and Housing, that the first order of the day be now read.
Shall it carry?
Carry. Order number 1, consideration of the estimates in committee.
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Social Development and Housing, that this House do now resolve itself into Committee of the Whole House to take into consideration the grant of supply to Her Majesty.
Shall it carry? The Honourable Member from Tignish, Palmer Road, Deputy Speaker to chair the Committee of the Whole House, please.
Committee of the whole House to consider the grant of supply to Her Majesty. A request has been made to bring a stranger onto the floor. Shall it be granted? Granted. Honourable members, we had left on page 28, the Department of Agriculture and Land. We read the section Provincial Planning and are still debating that section. Please state your name and title for Hansard.
Mary Kinsman, Director of Corporate Services and Finance for the Department of Agriculture and Land.
Thank you very much. Leader of the third party.
Mr. Chair. I just have some questions about planning and regulation of subdivision approvals. Could you elaborate on subdivision approvals?
Subdivision approvals?
Yes.
Those come through our department, and they go through the same process as they're applied through. They have to go through IROC, but then it comes down to the planning section to decide whether they're approved or not, and then it goes through Executive Council for approval.
Leader of the third party.
Thank you. So if I had 100 acres and I wanted to subdivide it and sell lots off, so I go to IRAC, then it'd come to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Leader of the third party.
After it gets to you, then you have Department of Transportation that's involved, I believe, and you have Department of Community and Lands that's involved. So when a permit is issued, do you get a recommendation from IRAC and then it's discussed with those other departments?
No, we get a recommendation from the Land Division.
Leader of the third party.
Division, which is a division of your department? Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm asking these questions is it seems like if a subdivision approval's approved and it's on a road that is not a classified road, then we end up getting calls that the road is not upgraded. Somebody gets a permit to build a nice fancy home on that road, you can't get to and from their house. So I guess, the reason why I'm bringing this up are the departments lined up, do they discuss these things? What conditions are put in place when someone builds that house? Do you have any knowledge of that?
So, yeah, there is communications. We can't, if transportation doesn't sign off on it, we can't sign off on it either, so.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Both departments have to agree on the application.
Leader of the third party.
So it has to go through TIE if they want to build on if they don't have access.
Okay.
They need, TIE deals with the right-of-ways.
Do you ever have any of those refused, to your knowledge, because of the road conditions?
100 house subdivisions? They don't usually come that far. If they're denied, right? So.
Okay.
Yeah. Leader of the third party.
So if the road exists already and it's not maintained on a regular basis and someone builds, is there restrictions with their permit? Are you aware of that?
I'm not, I'll have to bring that back.
Leader of the third party.
That's good for now. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, Chair, there was questions that were asked in a previous section, and can I just go back to the animal health section just to follow up? Would that be okay? Thank you. So on the bees and the protocols for importation, we talked about that, Minister, about bringing back the science that was used to make the decision of what the current protocols were. Have you been able to access that information and
Yeah, we have all the
table it?
answers to the questions here. We'll table them too.
Okay.
Mermaid Stratford, or wait for that. Sorry.
Okay, I've got 3 days of this, so that's day 1. I've only got 3 copies because it's kind of thick. This is day 2.
Yes, thank you, Minister.
And those are 10.
A lot of questions there. Day 4.
Minister, are you tabling these documents?
I guess so, yeah.
It's a yes or no?
Yes. That's
right. Okay.
You can do whatever you want.
It's not what we want. Okay, Mermaid Stratford, do you have more questions on this, or do you?
I do, just on one other thing that we didn't
Sure.
cover, and I just wanted to go, I wanted to ask you about strangles and the impact to the racing industry. And we obviously know that it is a significant impact to the racing industry. Minister, are you aware, so I'm aware, so I'm sure you're aware of other horse barns that have experienced strangles in the past, not necessarily in the racing industry. Is there consideration that whenever there is an outbreak, even if it's not just for racehorses, but all horses, that there would be funding in order to do testing, knowing the level of
So this, I know you're trying to tag this as a racehorse issue. It's not a race. It's an island-wide health issue for our horse industry, and harness racing is a major player. I can tell you that our department, our provincial veterinarian has been on this case for quite some time and is very well, and she is doing she's recommending all the protocols that in biosecurity measures for all our stables across the island, and the outbreak is in the harness racing facilities, so that's where the focus is right now. But we are concerned about every stable on this island, so this is an issue that it's very serious, and we take it very seriously, and I'm glad that the Minister of Finance responsible for harness racing stepped up to support this initiative.
Mayor Stafford, we're going to have to go back to provincial planning, the section that we're on now. So I gave you an opportunity to go back and ask 2 questions about table documents.
Can I keep going?
I'm the chair.
Okay.
Okay? So do you have any more questions regarding provincial planning?
Not a question, just a comment before I ask my next question. And I do appreciate it that it is considered a health issue straight across the province. And I am glad that that's being considered. And I do wish that that announcement had come out of the Department of Agriculture, because I think that's where it resided.
Honourable member, do you have a question regarding this section?
My question on the on land. So, 1 second here. I'll put my name at the end.
What I'm going to jump in here and just say, I gave you an opportunity to go back and ask 2 questions for things. And you've had, and I'm counting, over 50 questions so far on this. So I gave you lots of opportunity, and we're trying to move along with some flow and some proper procedure here. So I'm just trying to be fair to everyone.
And I appreciate that, and I know that I've asked a lot of questions, and I do
And that you have every right to ask as many questions as you want pertaining to the sections we're on, and I do give some leverage.
And I appreciate that, Chair. I do recognize that that was the case. So, under the provincial planning section, there is the line for professional services that's $325,000. AL 21, I believe, is where it is in the section. And it identifies this as consultant services. Can you give me a little bit more detail of who the consultants were and what it was used for?
The $325,000 is 2 projects. It's the Land Matters, it's our modernization project, the Land Matters project, and the digitization of our records. So, as you can see, there's a couple of things. That you're seeing, some of this costs have been spent in other accounts because we didn't use it as professional services. And due to the unique year that we had this year, some of the work certainly didn't get finished, and it was planned to be more than a 1-year project. So there were a number of delays for these initiatives, but I can tell you some of the things that did happen. Some of the milestones for the Land Matters was the website and the survey. A survey report, what was heard, has been posted. The advisory committee was struck. There have been some stakeholder presentations. What hasn't happened, we had a lot of fees in there for maybe consultants or legal if we needed it. But right now, at this point, everything's been done in-house. Okay? So, and when it comes to the digitization project, quite a bit of work, some work has been done there. Also, right now, most of that has been in-house. We've purchased the equipment that we need. Retention schedules, have been prepared for the records in land. One section is not complete, one section is complete. The committee has been meeting on how we're going to set up the metadata and how it's all going to look, how that we're going to store the data. So that will follow into next year. But so some of the, you're not seeing, although we're forecasting $70,000 there. That was kind of forecast to the end of the year because we thought we might be spending some of that, but we didn't spend that amount. The only thing we spent was a small amount that was done on some surveying, and that was it.
Okay.
Reverend Stratford.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the explanation on that, Mary. Under the Lands Protection Act, so what is the budget to improve the administration of the Lands Protection Act?
Well, It's we have a budget of $150,000 for our Land Matters project.
Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. So IRAC said to the committee that they don't have the ability to easily search property records. And this comes down to a little bit in when you look at who the corporate owners are or the beneficial owners are within corporations, and then you also have the land registry, and neither are easily searchable so that you can pull the information together at all. Has there been discussion within the department of consolidating those two registries so that so anybody can go in and easily search the land registry or that corporate registry and have them connected together?
Well, a goal going forward, but that's not in agriculture, that's in justice, so that's where the corporate registry is.
Right, but the land registry, Minister, is in your...
The land registry is not in, no, it's in the finance.
Mermaid Stratford.
Okay.
The deeds, yes.
Okay. Thank you, so I'll save that. Does the department support or provide any support to municipalities when they're creating their municipal plans?
Well, Mary would know, she's fisheries and communities as well. So.
The Department of Agriculture would not. Department of Agriculture and Land would not know. The Department of Fisheries and Communities, that would be under their jurisdiction.
Okay.
Mermaid Stratford.
And so the municipal plans, they cover about 30% of the province, right? And then there's another 70% that's unincorporated. So when it comes to the provincial planning of the unincorporated areas, how is that supported?
So our department, if they don't have a plan, our department does the plan.
We'll do the full.
Mermaid Stratford.
We'll do the full plan, okay. And do planners provide support, like your planners that are in your department, do they provide support to communities, or are they separate?
There's two separate departments, but there is communications between them. The communities have planners and the land has planners, yes.
Okay.
Mermaid Stratford.
And are there any plans, or is there a requirement to hire any more planners within the Department of Agriculture and Land?
Not at this time. You had asked yesterday about certified planning positions.
Yes.
There's one certified planner. There is one vacant position.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another planner position that's not a certified position.
Mermaid Stratford.
So I'm just going to play that back, Mary.
Yeah.
One certified planner, one vacancy, and then one that's not a certified
Yeah.
planner? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So is there plans, though, for the one that's not certified? Is the department able to assist in order to help them gain that certification? I think it's an important step. I don't know if that's the individual's plan, but if that was, is it something that that government can help them do?
As you said, I'm not sure on what this position is doing, but it's always our goal in the department to provide training and development for staff. That's part of what we do too. We have funding for training and development.
Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you. So I'm not sure if the answers are in the handouts that were just put out, but can you just tell me the timelines for the Land Matters PEI project might have been included in the handouts. I'm not sure if they were or not, but if they weren't, I haven't had a chance to look at it. Can you tell me what the status is on the review of the Planning Act?
From the Lands Matter, we expect a report early June, late May, and then we'll evaluate it from there.
Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. So based on that timeline and based on government's requirements in order to bring forward legislation, do you expect to be able to bring forward legislation or any changes in the next sitting of the legislature?
Yes.
Okay.
Mermaid Stratford.
And so when we were last sitting here last year, COVID had we were talking about building permits and the timelines in order to be able to get permits completed and out and finished. And I know that COVID had impacted that. We've also heard people waiting quite a long time for building permits, and sometimes it's extremely timely, especially for seasonal businesses. What does that look like right now for your wait times and getting building permits approved?
We're under 2 weeks, 14 business days, and we were down to as low as 11 days. But just lately it went up a little bit because of the push for permits before the National Building Code came into. So they're a little bit, I think it might even be over 14, but it's around 14, 15, 16 days now.
Mermaid Stratford.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We've heard in the House this week concerns around planning and development in certain island municipalities. And I think the answers that we received in the House was that resides in agriculture and land. So does the province provide oversight to planning and development practices in island municipalities?
Oh, I'll have to bring that back.
Mermaid Stratford.
Okay. And how does the province assist the smaller municipalities in planning initiatives? So especially if they're surrounded by unincorporated areas?
I think that's a question for communities.
Mermaid Stratford.
Okay. The only challenge, like we heard this week when questions were asked about planning with municipalities, that falls under agriculture and land. So just finding a little challenging of where the division is between the two and what resides in each section. Since those two departments have been separated, have you found a challenge? Has there been challenges that are difficult to overcome?
No.
Mermaid Stratford.
So so when we ask questions around municipalities and they're sent to, and it's stated that resides under agriculture and land, are you able to provide documentation to explain exactly where the difference is in the responsibilities between the two departments lie, and do you have that ability to share that with?
So my department has regular communications on certain files. If there's any issues, the two departments get together and we discuss it, and I sign off on the part that requires sign off from Department of Land, and the rest stays in communities. So we haven't had an issue, but if there is ever an issue, it's we get together and meet. So it hasn't been. Everything's been able to get resolved.
Mermaid Stratford.
Okay. Thank you for that. I have a community in my district that things haven't been resolved, right? So there's been a lot of outstanding questions, and there has been times where the CAO or the former mayor would have gone and asked one department and was told that resides under the other department. So I do have concerns that there's confusion around where a small rural municipality, and I guess even a larger municipality, I'm not sure, I'm just speaking for a small rural municipality of where they go. So I do want to flag that, Minister, as there has been communication challenges with some of the smaller ones and challenges in getting the answers that they require, especially going through the process for the MGA. I have no further questions. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. O'Leary and Verness.
Thanks, Sarah. It's a long wait for that one, but anyway, I want to follow up a little bit on Mermaid Stratford. She asked some of the questions I was going to ask. It regards around the building permits and the wait times. And you'd mentioned previously that rule of thumb is about 2 weeks to get a building permit. Let's go with the assumption that there is no backlog at all and somebody applied for a building permit. How much time would it take one of your permit approvers to deal with an average or a very simple application to grant the approval?
Well, the best they've done since I've come here is 11 days turnaround, business days. And that's a lot of the issues. it can be a very quick process if you bring the proper information in.
Correct, yeah.
And when they ask you to bring something, bring the proper information, it can go quite quickly. But of course, there's always, it's multiple departments. It sometimes takes time. It has to go to other people's desks, as things have to go to TIE or TI now. And but if everything goes smooth, I'd say 11 days is good.
O'Leary Inverness?
And like, just, I was a former planner, so I kind of know a little bit about this, but actually it wouldn't, a simple one would be a day maybe. You could probably, even a few days to get a little bit of information or feedback. But we realize that there would be applications coming in all the time, and there would be. What I'm running into, like I've been an MLA for quite some time, I've never ever had calls from people complaining about the backlog of building permits until really the last 6 months. And my first inclination was that it was somewhat COVID related. But as I find out that the person in the West anyway has been working all through COVID. They've been going into work. There's been some restrictions about how they got their applications in and things of that nature. But that really didn't affect that person's work at all. And I'm getting calls that we're into months in getting approvals for applications from building permits. And I noticed from a staffing perspective here, you've actually spent less money in staff and are even budgeting, we'll say, the same amount of money, and we'll assume that there was probably some wage increases, so you're doing less money. So do you look at the different locations and sort of see what sense of delivery of service? So if they're not meeting the 11-day turnaround, or let's go 2 weeks as a simple, do you respond by bringing some staff back, because you've laid staff off too, and I'm just sort of questioning the issues around delivery of service to developers and to people.
Yeah, no, it is a focus across the island, and we try to utilize a balanced workload for all the offices across the island. So if Montague's not busy, they sometimes take some workload from Charlottetown or Summerside or Larry, vice versa. So we're trying to balance that. We've had some staffing issues in the past. I think we're on the right direction now, and the things have really improved over my tenure here, and I hope we can continue that. We have the right management in place now, and I hope to, and we're also working on a checklist that when you come in with your application, here's the boxes you have to check off, and that's a lot of the delays, and a couple months seems long, but I'd like to know the backstory on that, if the information never came, full information never came or whatever. So.
O'Leary Inverness.
Yeah, no, and I get it. I've seen applications come in and passed, and sometimes there's not a lot of detail on them, and I totally get that, and that's on the person who makes the application. So I will say that, but I will dispute your comment to say that it's getting better, because, like I say, I've been a member for some time, so I never really got many calls from constituents saying that what's going on with how come I can't get my building permit approved. It's pretty straightforward. Now there may be. I think you're accurate in saying that there's maybe a bit of a panic over the issue around the building code and things of that nature, and that may have precipitated a few more applications. But this has been back, like say, for at least 6 months that I've been getting these types of calls, and I think there's an issue there, and you need to address that to a certain degree. So
we'll take a look at that.
It may be, getting from 14 days to 11 days is good, but that's not the case in the West. So I think and my understanding that you really have one person approving building permits from probably about Wellington West. It's like a third of the island that you've got, it just seems like that person is either overworked, and once again, I'm told that you have staff that you bring in on a seasonal basis. But when you see the numbers go up, maybe you should bring that person back a little earlier to get things. Because I say, at the end of the day, we're dealing with customer service. We're holding up people from building houses. It's good for the economy, and seasonalities matter too in this, because, like I say, when the frost comes out of the ground, people want to be starting construction. And also, I'd say, with whether it's climate change driven or not, that we're able to work longer into the fall season, and there just doesn't seem to be as many days that construction can't happen anymore. And I think you need to look at that. So I just wanted to make that comment. And
Sure. I do want to argue a little bit with you. The timeline
okay.
has improved under, so I have looked at the stats, and we are doing better. I know right now it doesn't seem that way, but there's a little push on. But it's about balancing the staff workload, and we've had record construction in the last year for sure, and almost 2 years. So, and that's continuing the trend this year, and the staff actually in the West are being brought back earlier than ever before. So we hope to improve on that, but I'll keep a focus on that and make sure it's a balance.
Larry and Vanessa.
Well, I guess we'll debate it a bit more then, and I'd agree that there probably is more construction going on, but like I say, at the end of the day, I never got calls before, and I don't have the liberty to get the statistics of how many.
Right.
I'm just kind of going from just an observation, and I'll also add in a little bit. When my father passed away, we had to go through a subdivision issue about subdividing some property for some of his grandchildren, and it took a lot of time. And I say I'm certainly not blaming any of the staff. It just they seem to be busy, and so I'm just saying I think I have enough evidence to say that it doesn't seem to be real good right now in the West, but hopefully you'll address that and deal with it. Okay?
We'll address it. Yeah.
Thank you. While I have an opportunity, I'll back that member up because I'm receiving the same calls.
Him?
I'm receiving the same calls. Yeah. But there is record numbers. I know that there is record numbers for building permits, and I know a lot of them for the building, even just a simple building permit. The site assessment has been done, the culvert application has been in, the septic permit has been issued. So they're just waiting, and they do the plan up with their setback. So it's not that long. It shouldn't take that long to do, but it's taking some of them 6 weeks. And I understand it's a staffing issue from what I'm receiving when I inquire. So just wanted to say I'm receiving the same calls.
Much appreciated, Chair.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Chair. And carrying on the same vein, Minister, I actually had a friend just this morning here in Charlottetown go into the office in Gordon Drive for a very simple building permit for a renovation. And they were told that it will take 6 weeks. That's what they were told. And everything else is ready to go in this particular case, as far as I'm aware. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that was literally just coincidental, of course, that we happen to be sitting here talking about this section of the budget today. But I've spoken to the person since they were in the office, and maybe it will be less, and I hope it will. But just for your own information, that's somebody who was told that this morning.
As soon as I get off the floor here, I'll make a phone call.
I appreciate it. That's all I had to say, Chair.
You're welcome. Charlottetown, Brighton.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if you'll permit me to go back and ask a question on soil health.
Do you want to take it, or? I'm sorry, honourable member, we were back on soil health quite a few days ago. Right now we're into the planning, and we not only carry that section, but we carry that whole division.
I know. It's not.
So, okay, do you have a question on this particular?
Fine, I'll take it.
Do you want to take it? Sure. Okay, so you'll take it.
It's a fairly modest amount. I was wondering if you can tell me what do you actually do for that approximately $50,000 a year?
That's a soil health test.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the new.
We pay for the testing.
Yes.
So you pay for the testing?
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering, does that test have the capability of, for instance, measure the carbon content in the soil?
I don't know the exact answer to that. I'll have to bring that back.
Charlottetown, Brighton.
Thank you, Chair. So do you know how many tests you make a year?
Is the numbers there, Mary?
Back to the soil.
All right, just give a second. It's a few pages back here. So.
I'm sorry I missed it.
I have the stats with me. No, I'm sorry, I don't have the statistics with me. I know we wanted some of the funding that we're using that's new to us for this year, for the soil health testing package that we've added to soil samples. We're expecting for that particular piece alone to be 200 samples. That's not the ones that we get in from the farmers. Those are the ones that we're doing ourselves. So I don't have the total number, but I can bring that back.
Charlotte Brighton?
Thank you. So the reason I'm concerned with additional issues coming up like net zero and irrigation that both relates to, properties of the soil testing, do you have the capacity to ramp up?
Oh,
if
yeah,
needed?
it's a significant amount of money that's a lot of soil tests, $50,000, so we're
Okay.
And if we have to do more, we'll do more. We won't skimp on that one.
Charlotte Brighton?
Thank you, Chair. And back to planning, to thank you for taking a detour. What are your plans for implementing net zero, in particular with the codes, which is great that they're being valid at the end of the month here? What are your plans to upgrade and to meet your net zero goals?
So our first goal was to implement the National Building Code, which has a lot of standards in it. But I think once we get established for a little while, we'll start looking at how we can improve on that with the net zero so we can reach our targets, our target that we're aiming for.
Charlotte Brighton?
Do you have set any dates for that? Could we hope something action within the year?
We'll probably start looking at it this time next year.
Charlotte Brighton?
Sorry, Jack. Are you going to make some public consultations on that?
Yep. That's what we're all about, consultation.
Okay.
Charlotte Brighton?
Thank you, Chair.
Leader of the third party.
Chair, getting back to the 4 to 6 week timeline for approval of building permits, and please don't take this as I have anything against the building codes that's coming the end of the month, but what's that going to do to somebody that applied yesterday to build a new house if it's a month before they get approval? So are they going to fall under the new building code?
It's when they put their application in.
The day they put it in? So it's got nothing to do with approval, it's got when they put it in. So then with the way lumber and everything's going up, would it not be to your department's best interest to try to expedite some of these building permits to help
it would be
contractors and individuals across the province?
Yep, I'll do that as soon as I get off the floor.
Leader of the third party.
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question around lots that have already been approved and already subdivisions. So speculation is a challenge, right? And we're seeing farmland being purchased and then pending approvals for development of subdivisions. The last number I had was 30,000 vacant lots. Do you guys track how many are vacant, and how are you monitoring that?
30,000 is the last number that I was given, and I hope that could be addressed in maybe the Land Matters or report that comes out on those vacancies. It is a concern to me, and a lot of these have been subdivided for years and years and years, and we don't even know some of them. We know, but communities don't even know that it's already been subdivided in some areas. So.
Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. Just one more follow-up. Is that something that can be publicly put out in the public, so that there is awareness of where lots are available, so that we can kind of slow down that speculation a little bit, so that we're not having additional farmland bought up? Because there's when you have deep pockets, you can quickly purchase it, right? And if it's not developed,
Yeah, that's something we
in
can look.
agriculture?
I'll have to look, to see what can be done in that. but-
Okay.
Mermaid
thank you.
Stratford.
I'm great, thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Shall a section carry?
Carried.
Total Department of Agriculture and Land, total land division, 4,227,400. Shall it carry?
Carried.
Total Department of Agriculture and Land, 38,906,700. Shall it carry? Honorable members, we're now going to take a recess for approximately 10 minutes. Okay, honorable members, we're back in, and now we're going to begin with the, just give me a second to get back to my page. 86. Page 86. And we're going to be starting with the Department of Fisheries and Communities. The request has been made to bring a stranger onto the floor. Shall it be granted? Please state your name and title for Hansard, please.
Mary Kinsman, Director of Finance and Corporate Services for the Department of Fisheries and Communities.
Thank you very much. Minister, would you like to begin with any kind of an opening statement, or do you want to go right into the essence?
No, we're fine right into it.
Okay. Department Management Administration. Appropriations provided for operation of the Office of the Minister and Deputy Minister and centralized administrative functions for the Department. Administration, $18,500. Equipment, $1,000. Material supplies and services, $22,900. Professional services, $1,000. Salaries, $363,000. Travel and training, $15,200. Total administration, $421,600. Tyne Valley, Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So I noticed that the forecast for administration is quite a bit over budget, where the salary line is substantially below. Can you explain what happened there?
I'll explain that, Mary.
Sure. Administrative costs, and you'll see this throughout this budget. This is where our telecommunication costs are. So we had a lot higher with adapting to COVID. We purchased probably some additional cell phones for people who work from home. We had to buy teleconferencing type of equipment, that type of thing. So you're going to see those up. On the salaries, we had one administrative position that was vacant, and no requirement for casuals for the year.
Tyne Valley, Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the increased capacity around telecommunication, so do you foresee that, obviously it wasn't planned, but with COVID you had to. Do you see that changing the way that the work is done in this section moving forward?
No, we're very fortunate in our department that a lot of the staff have the capability of working from home anyway. So we believe it's just a bump in the road, and it will come back down to normal. We don't anticipate anything drastic.
Tyne Valley, Sherbrooke.
That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Shall the section carry?
Carried.
Marine Fisheries and Seafood Services. Seafood Services. Appropriations provided for the effective delivery of information and product and market development programs for both the commercial fishing industry and seafood products. Administration, $3,000. Equipment, $1,500. Materials, supplies, and services, $53,300. Professional services, $4,000. Salaries, $250,800. Travel and training, $29,500. Grants, $338,800. Total seafood services, $680,900. Shall the section carry? Tyne Valley, Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So can you just give just a quick overview of what the department does under this section, just so I can make sure I'm clear on that?
Basically, we provide quality advice and assistance and support to the industry management and science-based decision marketing. We foster partnerships to support the viable and innovative and sustainable growth of all island fishery sectors across the island. So basically a huge support role for the marine fisheries.
Tyne Valley, Sherbrooke.
So, okay, that's good. So in terms of, strategic research, science and advocacy and the support work through this section, what is the department doing this year to support the moderate livelihood fishery?
Say again?
What is the department doing this year to support the moderate livelihood fishery?
That's a very good question. We must remember that this is a complete 100% federal issue. I am in conversations with the federal government, the DFO, on this. I've had numerous conversations with Chief Bernard and Chief Gould on this. So we're working behind the scenes to make sure that direct lines of communication are open, and that we're there to. We want to see, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we see a sustainable fishery for all fishers across PEI that takes into respect conservation and sustainability for the future. So, that includes our First Nations, that includes our commercial fisheries, and that also includes, to some part, recreational fishers and other things that, that follow through that, Honourable Member.
Con Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So are any supports being offered to Indigenous Islanders who want to engage in the fishery?
Well, again, remember, it's a federal issue, so, if you're talking about the buying back of licenses or putting more licenses or traps on the table, that's the mandate of the federal government and Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So we don't get involved in it. However, I can tell you, I've had conversations with Chief Blanchard. She's very interested in a Guardian program. I was actually in communication with her yesterday. They've succeeded in getting funding from the federal government, DFO, and Coast Guard to put a vessel in the water at Lennox Island. That vessel is in Halifax right now, and I believe today, from my conversation with her yesterday by text, was that they're looking to head over to Mountain or Amherst, I think, today, and to pick up the truck that will haul that vessel. So we're having that type of conversation of how we can support them through rural development, where they could possibly make an application for an EDA worker or Jobs for Youth or staffing to assist them in their training, or possible equipment that they might want to put on that vessel. So that's the type of support that we can provide. But when it comes to the actual fishery itself, that must remember that's a complete federal responsibility by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
Let someone else go, Chair. Thank you.
Summerside Wilmot.
Thank you, Chair. I've also been in contact with Chief Bernard about the Fishery Guardian program, and I just was wondering if there was going to be anything in the budget. I hear you saying possibly Jobs for Youth or something like that, but there won't be any direct dollars to support that program. Is that what you're saying?
Though thanks, Honourable Member. The Chief and I have had several conversations about that, and she actually submitted a proposal to me that I'm looking at and reviewing. But I've got to be very careful. You got to understand that this is a federal responsibility, and I have to make sure that I respect DFO, the role of the minister, and Indigenous Affairs, right? So if we can assist them in some way, then I'm open to that. I got to say, we have a great relationship on PEI between our First Nations and our commercial fisheries in this province as it comes to First Nation relationship in the fishery. And I want that my biggest mandate this year, I believe, is to ensure that we have a good relationship going forward with an orderly fishery that involves everybody, that's sustainable for the future, and that's exercises conservation and so on.
Summerside Wilmot.
Thank you, Chair. And I totally agree with you, and everyone on all sides of this issue wants a sustainable fishery. Right. There's no question about that. That's front of mind for the Mi'kmaq on PEI. There's no question. But I'm curious about your concern about stepping on the toes of DFO with a Fishery Guardian program. It seems to me there are a couple of other programs that we've offered some support on. Am I incorrect on that, Minister?
Well, say we're talking about, if you can, and I know you understand this. We're talking about nation to nation.
Well aware.
Right, and it's something that I've done a lot of research in. I've done a lot of reading into. I'm very aware of First Nations issues and their rights and as it applies to the treaty. And I understand what DFO is saying also and the federal government is saying. So I think it's very important that we as a province completely recognize that this is a nation-to-nation conversation, and that as a province we need to be aware of them conversations. But we also must not try to interfere in the rights of First Nations and the right to negotiate with the federal government.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke. Summerside Wilmot.
Thank you, Chair. As a member of Woodstock First Nation myself, I can tell you I definitely understand the difference between nation-to-nation conversations, but I'm not understanding how it would be interfering to support a proposal that's coming forward from the First Nation. I'm of the impression that we have some supports for Abiqui's fish hatchery, but I could be mistaken on that, and I don't see that that is stepping on toes or is an interference. So if we do see a proposal coming forward from the First Nation to the province, as we have in the past, I'm not sure how you're concerned that that would be.
Well, I misunderstood. I apologize. Will, last question. Did you say you're the Woodstock First Nations?
I am a Maliseet.
In New Brunswick,
That's right.
where I'm from.
my
So I have a lot of
family-
friends that are there, of course, with the Polchises, the Sapiers, the Tomas, and the McBrides. So that's where I grew up, so I'm very familiar with the lovely people up there. But we look at any application as it comes forward in rural development. That we'll look at any application. So, of course, I'm reviewing what they're asking for right now, but I must make sure that if we do fund something with that it doesn't interfere with something the federal government is mandated to provide. So, but I am willing, I'm working with the fire department up there right now, Lennox Island. We're assisting them with that. As I offered to Chief Bernard that under the boat program, that if we could look at an application for equipment for that. I further offered to her, had a conversation with her about maybe doing an EDA worker or some kind of program through the Employment Development Agency where we could, we could maybe put some money into staffing or dollars in that way there. So that's the conversations that are going on behind the scenes, if that answers the question. Yeah.
Somerset Wilmot.
Thank you, Chair. It does answer my question. I have been communicating with Chief Bernard on this too, so I'm glad to hear that's where it's at. And I would just encourage you to support this initiative. Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Member.
Okay. Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Are there plans to continue funding the PEI Shellfish Festival? I just note that the budget notes seem to suggest that the Shellfish Festival 3-year contract ended in 2020. So I'm wondering if there's plans to continue.
Well, I think we have to wait. It is down, but we have to wait and see what actually is going to turn about this year in COVID-20. With festivals happening this year. So, we will look at any application if what we've got budgeted now. If they come forward and say that they can do something else, then of course we'll look at it and adjust the budget if we can to support them. One thing we're very lucky to do in this department is we can move money around a little bit to assist different organizations, and we will continue to do that.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, so so the issue there then is really mostly related to COVID. So barring that or in the future, it is something that you plan to continue, the department plans to continue supporting, except if there are limitations
That's right.
due to COVID.
Mary, do you want to answer anything to that?
Okay, Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. What about plans to fund Lobster Love for 2021?
The lobster roll.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yes, that's a good question. It was a great success last year, Honourable Member, and it's something I enjoyed wholeheartedly. I had conversations with the PEI Lobster Committee there the other day, their AGM, and we're committed to that. And I actually they're actually planning for it now, so we'll see how that rolls out. But we are there to support that promotion.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, great. So you're planning to support that promotion, but it's not yet figured out how, in exactly how much and what that will look
It's
like.
in the committee's hands right now.
Okay, Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So can you tell me a bit about how the pandemic has affected the price of lobster?
If you can please respect the part that I have to be very careful what I say.
Okay.
In regards to pricing, I do not want to be seen to influence a price or cause any effect on that. I can, what's that? Lobster sales in 2020 were down to some extent because of the 2-week delay in the season in the spring. I can tell you that the price, of course, was lower in the spring than it normally is because of the uncertainty in the market. However, export markets were strong out of the province. The fall fishery was up compared to 2019. The price in the fall was lower than was higher than the spring price, and that's only the second time that ever happened. And I think that was because of the adaptation of the industry to provide a product even with the problems that were experienced with COVID-19 and industry shutting down. So that would be my answer for that.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay. So the grants line that includes the PEI Mussel and Oyster Market Development Promotion Initiative. Can you explain a little bit more about what this program actually, what does it support? What does it do?
Well, it's a 2-year program. It's $100,000 this year and $100,000 next year, and it's an agreement with the Food Island Partnership, for the period of October of this year to 2022 March, I believe. The total budget is around $900,000 going into it, and what we've been able to do is secure funding partners through ACOA, Innovation PEI. My honorable member there came on board with that. So between the three of us, we are trying to promote, of course, mussels in the oyster market more in the domestic sense than before.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So, okay, so that does make a lot of sense. Do you have any more information about what that will look like, how you will go about promoting it?
I can bring back some information to you. Okay. We can reach into the department and get an actual briefing note for you and outlay.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
I'm also wondering about the Oyster Enhancement Fund. So that was something that I had heard from fishers that it was very successful, as well as the Aquaculture Association. So, wondering what the plans are to perhaps continue with that.
If you want to wait, when we get into the actual aquaculture section of that, we can talk about that.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so that's not in this section. Okay. Okay, so I do have another question.
Sure. Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Yes, in this section. I think it's in this section. So the Future Fishers Program. So can you tell me a bit about what kind of supports Islanders are getting through that program?
It's in the next section.
Yeah, that's in the next section. Oh, that's in Marine Fisheries and Regulated Services.
Okay, sorry. That's all for now then, Chair.
Okay, shall this section carry?
Carried.
Marine Fisheries and Regulatory Services, appropriations provided for the operation of services associated with the seafood buying and processing as prescribed by the Fisheries Act and the Fisheries Inspection Act. This section also supports the commercial fishing industry through strategic research, science, and advocacy. Administration, $5,600. Equipment, $300. Material supplies and services, $30,500. Professional services, $4,800. Salaries, $440,400. Travel and training, $43,400. Grants, $1,960,400. Total marine fisheries and regulatory services, $2,485,400. Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the section with the Future Fishers Program? Okay. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Okay, I apologize. Say again, member.
The Future Fisher Program.
Yeah. So, of course, as you understand, it's to assist new entrants to become more knowledgeable with all aspects of the lobster fishery and seeing them to be better situated for financial success. The program invests interest relief for the first 3 years of future fisher that is involved in the industry, and each fisher is eligible to receive a maximum contribution of $10,000 over 3 years, which is $9,000 of interest release and $1,000 towards training initiatives. So, the budget on this is basically, it's adaptable to how many people apply and how many want to partake in the actual program itself. So, again, it's how many applications will be received, and if needed, do we need to expand the system or expand the program?
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So, I'm assuming that the purpose of this program, at least part of it, is to, encourage people to get into the lobster fishery and to continue, into the future. So, do you track how successful this program is in that goal of people continuing on, in this line of work, in the fishery?
So right now, there's actually been 236 applications that have been received or in the program so far. Something you might be interested to know is, I think it's next week or the week after, I'm having conversations with the Department of Education. I'd like to see a program started within our school system as an introductory type of level into our aquaculture and our lobster and our seafood industry, of a way of maybe encouraging more young people to become involved in our fishery, which would include possibly a step up into the Future Fisher program.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Great, that's a really interesting idea. So do you envision that as something that would be across the island and in all schools? And what, I guess, what grades, when would that happen?
Well, I think it would possibly look at the grades 11 and 12 area, somewhere possible like that. I'd say we're in a conceptual idea planning stage right now, and I'll know more when I have the conversation with the other department. But I see it as we could do either a pilot in one school or one area that's heavily involved in the fishery, in the island, and then from there, bring in some experts to give people a taste, we'll say, of the fishery, and I will have to say it. We have students that might not want to all be a doctor or a lawyer or a building construction guy, but that they might be interested in following their father's footprints of getting to the fishery, and this might be a good way of showing them what's out there.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
And so this is a really interesting idea, and I wonder, if you've spoken, with fishers who might be, interested in doing some sort of like a hands-on learning component to this as well. Is that what you're envisioning?
Yeah, I am actually. We're possibly, the student could take that training course part level in this classroom, and then over the summer, then he might be able to go out and actually work in the industry, and then we could actually tie in with our Jobs for Youth part onto that, where we'll say mussel producer or lobster or whatever guy can put in an application. He might get he gets approved for a student that's enrolled in this program, and then the student would get paid to go out and actually work in the fishery or in the aquaculture industry. So that's where my idea is sort of headed.
Okay, that's interesting.
Tyne
I'll
Valley Sherbrooke.
let you talk about that if you'd like. But so one more quick question about this. So the Future Fisher program is specifically for the lobster fishery. Can you tell me why other fisheries aren't included in this program?
Not really. I think that's just part of it's going back to what I said a minute ago about trying to get something into education. I think we need to look at our fishery across the whole island, and that, of course, we have labor shortages in some areas, and take what we've developed off the Future Fisher program and roll it back into the school program, but then open it up to a more broader industry as a whole, right across the whole fishery. So this could be part of that, honorable member.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you. So, and have you engaged in any, proactive discussions with representatives from other fisheries about the possibility of expanding this type of program beyond the lobster fishery?
Mary?
When we get into the aquaculture section, there is some funding this year that we've initiated for education and training.
Okay, thank you.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
That's all for now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Minister, just under the grants on this section, the grants seem to be trending downward from last year. Can you just give us a reason why there's a decrease in grants?
Mary, you want to touch on it?
Sure. The largest grant here is the Atlantic Fisheries Fund, and that's a 7-year program. We're in year 5. So how that program goes, so there's $300,000 less being spent next year, but we spent higher in the earlier years, so which is what you tend to do in these long-term programs. You tend to have a bit of a bell curve. So we spent higher in the earlier years, and so it's just reduced by, the program itself overall is not reduced, but that's just what our funding is for this upcoming year.
Okay, and do you anticipate that there'll be enough funding to see us through to the 7 years?
Oh, yes. We funded right through for the full 7 years. For the full amount that the province, it's a 70-30 program, so the federal government pays 70% of the cost, and we pay 30%.
I can tell you too, Chair, that I've already started conversations back, I think at least 6 months ago, at least now, with Minister Jordan. She approached me on a new funding agreement, or what a new possible AFF could look like, and we've had a few conversations on that. So what the next step would look like, and I thought it would be better to start them conversations now than at the end of year 7.
Okay. So. Okay. And so there's no other grants that are being decreased or eliminated?
The only other piece is there's $5,000 reduction. It's the interest support to the lobster rationalization program. That reduces as that loan goes down. It's just an automatic one year to year.
Okay, and one more thing on the tag on the Future Fishers program. there is a requirement for anyone to apply for it that they have to have a grade 12. Does that still apply? And if, pardon?
Doesn't apply, or it doesn't?
I'm not sure.
Okay, because I've had a few that had concerns over that, because, again, we go back to some of the expectations in some of the, well, obviously in the rural areas for fishing, where families often, with the boys, the expectations where you go to, a bit high school, and then once you get to the age of fishing, you go fishing with your dad or whomever, right? And then they want to get into their own fleet, but the requirement for the future fishers is that they have to have a grade 12. Is there any way that you could look into that to maybe either help these people out or maybe to drop that altogether?
That's a very good point, Honourable Member. I will take that back and we can start the discussion. That is, because I understand totally what you're saying there.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
O'Leary and Verness.
Minister, you mentioned the lobster rationalization program. How much is left outstanding on that loan, and is that with Finance PEI?
Mary?
Yes, it is. It was a,
$3 million loan. wasn't it?
yeah, and there was no principal paid down last year because of COVID.
That's right.
There was a
Yeah.
1 year off. I don't have the amount where it is right now.
We can bring that back.
Yeah.
Okay.
O'Leary and Verness.
And what's the interest rate in that loan?
I'd have to bring that back, Member.
O'Leary and Verness.
My guess would be is the interest rate is probably at about 4% on that. You could probably get a better rate than that. Would it not make some sense to refinance that at this point? It might save the fishers some money, not cost you any more money one way or the other, and pay that, and that will speed the paying down of that loan faster.
Good point. Good point. We can take that back on, Member. Yeah.
O'Leary and Verness.
I think that's fine. I just want to bring that to the
Yep.
minister's attention, and I think there's an opportunity there. I mean, it's been an outstanding loan for some time, and it was good for the fishing community. It bought, what it did is it bought a bunch of gears, and then they resell them back out to you can buy a certain amount of traps back to the fishers, and it's predominantly for the south side LFA 25. And I think that's been a sort of an issue. Previously, there wasn't a big advantage to paying it down because the interest rate was quite low. But now that interest rates have gone even lower, maybe there's some value in refinancing that.
It is a loan through Finance PEI in conjunction with, of course, the Prince Edward Island Fishermen Association.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that to the minister's attention.
Good point.
No, that's it.
Okay. Charlottetown Winslow.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regards to the PEI Fishermen's Association, the Fishers Assistance Program, I know it's confidential, but was there an uptake on that, or were fishermen and fisherwomen taking advantage of that program? I think I'm in the right section. Yes, it's under the grants.
Just at the bottom there.
4299.
4299. Oh, yeah, okay, right here. Yeah, that's for the sponsorship of the 4299. That's in regards to their sponsorship for their annual meeting, their AGM.
Charlottetown Winslow.
No, it's
Sorry,
good.
there's more information to come.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can speak.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the
My
Fishers
mistake.
Assistance Program.
Yeah, that's the confidential counseling service for members. We don't get involved in who they're counseling or the service that actually, how many people, it's confidential.
Okay.
But I can guarantee that if that fund requires more funds being put into it to help with mental health, then we will immediately look at any request for that.
Yeah. Charlottetown Winslow.
No, that's great. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Charlotte Section Carry.
Carried.
Carried.
Total marine fisheries and seafood services, $3,166,300. Shall it carry?
Carried.
Carried.
Aquaculture. Appropriations provided to manage and support the sustainable development of both the aquaculture industry and the estuarial shellfish fisheries. Administration, $10,100. Equipment, $11,300. Material supplies and services, $134,200. Professional services, $62,900. Salaries, $858,500. Travel and training, $62,000. Grants, $923,100. Total aquaculture, $2,062,100. Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Chair. So the Oyster Enhancement Fund, this is the right spot to chat about that?
Yes.
Okay. So that was something that I heard was very successful, and I'm wondering if you have plans to do that again this year, considering that we are still struggling through the last bit of the COVID pandemic.
Well, we are continuing our base funding of oyster enhancement with the PEI Shellfish Association. They've exercised to me that that's all they are looking for this year. But when we come up with the program last year because of the world markets and what happened to COVID, and took it as a way that we could really enhance our Shellfish Association, our wild oyster across the whole island. So, right now, the Shellfish Association has expressed to me that this is the base need they need for this year, and that's what we're going for based on their request. And if we, honorable member, if something were to take place, possibly then we could look at some more areas to expand that enhancement project.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
And when you say the base funding, do you mean for the Shellfish Enhancement Program, that $100,000?
That's right.
Yeah. So that amount has been $100,000 for a very long time. I'm not sure how many years, many years, I believe.
Yeah.
No? Maybe, I'm not sure. How long has it been $100,000? Do you know? I don't know.
It's been a few years, Mary.
It's been 100,000 for quite a few years. I don't have the exact time, but I could figure that out.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. And I mean, it doesn't really matter how long, I guess. My point here is that it hasn't increased in that time. And have you had a request at all from the Shellfish Association to consider an increase in that amount?
No, I can tell you that I have all kinds of conversations with President Bob.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I'm interested in is how we can improve our beds in other ways, our wild oyster bed, like desilting and repositioning of spat lines and that kind of work. So we are in conversations with that. But as they put in a request, and we look at it and we try to work with them. I can tell you right now, we're actually looking at possibly doing a test. They're very interested in something. Of course, greenhouse gases are an issue. So one proposal that we're talking with them right now is doing a test on converting some wild oyster fishery vessels to solar power, where they could use their outboard to get to the bed or the area. Then they would switch over to a type of electronic motor, something like a mini Coyote motor, with the establishment of a canopy over top that could house solar beds. So I've had conversations in the very first stages with Aspen Kemp on that. So that's a project we're trying to, get information on, and how we can help them in different ways besides the enhancement also. So.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, so that's interesting. So do you have any anticipated timelines for implementation of that pilot?
Well, to be honest with you, I'd like to see vessels in the water testing this by spring, to be honest.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
So is this another example, though, of, as you had mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of flexibility in this department for some reason to sort of just move money around? Because, I mean, it sounds like an interesting initiative again, but how are you able to do this, without it being laid out? Quite honestly, I just don't quite understand.
Well, we can cost share. We do have money available in sections of the budget for these type of projects and stuff, by way of grants or so on. We can also tie in rural development with a nonprofit group. To do cost share. We can also team up with partners like University of Prince Edward Island and possibly the Department of Environment and Water and Climate Change. So right now we're in the very first stages, and when we get a plan together and an execution, then we'll ask different funding partners to be involved with it and see what we can move forward. But the Shellfish Association would be the first partner in that group.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and that makes a lot of sense to work with different partners. I do wonder, though, this is the second time you sort of alluded to the fact that the money can be moved around. Like, is there how much padding is there in the budget for this department to be able to have that type of flexibility, and where did you find that?
I can guarantee there's no padding.
No, okay.
No, I guarantee you that. It's just we're able to, within the budget, to work with partners and groups.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
So the handouts on FC10, it shows that the PEI Fisheries and Aquaculture Clean Technology Adaptation Program was undersubscribed in 2021 by 55,000 of 100,000 budget. So can you tell me a little bit about why that happened?
Mary?
In many times, it's just based upon the number of applications you receive during the year. I don't specifically know why that one was underutilized this year. Oh, yes, I do, because that is our contribution towards, it's a federal government has a program, and to apply to that program, the province has to provide 10% of the funding. So a fisher would apply to the federal program.
Okay.
And part of that is that we have to provide 10%. So it's just how many people have applied to that federal FACTAP program, as we call it. So that was down. And so this year, for next year, you're seeing the funding has been reduced somewhat to that program. And we kind of moved funding around, so we have a new program. This is what we talked about. We established the Aquaculturalist Business Training Program. We've put some funding towards that.
Okay.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke?
Thank you, Chair. So just thinking about the last project, Minister, that you just mentioned, that you, the pilot that you're hoping to move forward with solar on oyster boats, the Aquaculture Clean Technology Adaptation Fund, that seems like they might, would that fall? Could you use that type of fund for that type of, is that something you've looked into?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke?
All right. Guess we figured that one out. Very good. I think that's it for me. We'll let someone else go.
Okay. Minister, I know the salaries in this section are increasing by $147,000 over compared to what they were paid out last year.
Yeah.
Is these for new positions or any new positions?
No, the savings last year were because we were short 2 vacant positions during the year, an oyster biologist and a financial program officer.
So now they're filled?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other vacant positions?
The program officer position is now filled. I'm not sure, there may be one other position. They're going through a competition process, so.
Okay. And under the grants, it shows that you're down $100,000 compared to what was paid out last year. What was the reason for that?
That's mainly to do with one particular project. So grants are down from last year. We're down $75,000. There was one project that we had there. It was called the Genome Atlantic funding. So it's funding from that particular group, and it's for a genome project. It's 100% offset by revenue. It was a 3-year project. So you're just seeing that has been reduced, like that's over. So it's offset by the reducing in revenue.
Okay. Are there any other grants that may be discontinued or have completed in the last fiscal?
The only other reduction that we had was to 2 programs, and then we used that funding to reallocate, as I said, to establish the new aquaculture business program. We just talked about what we call the FACTAP program, where we moved funding from there, and the other program is. I always know them by their shortened names, that's why. The Aquaculture and Fisheries Research Initiative Growth Program, that's reduced slightly. Some of the funding moved into this new program area.
Okay. Summerside South Drive.
Speaking of FACTAP here, I know some recipients in the past have had very long wait times between when they were approved to when they had funds dispersed to them, and some of them ended up having to take out loans and accrue interest charges as they awaited the department to release the funds to them. Have you recognized this issue, and have those wait times improved?
We can check on that, all remember. To be honest with you, it's the first I've heard about it, but we can look into that and get back to you on that.
Yes, sir.
Summerside South Drive.
Yes, the lead time was months for this person, so that I was speaking with. And so either they accrue interest charges by taking a loan, or their suppliers start to losing money by having their capital used up. So it's affecting the industry itself to have that delay in there. So that would be great. What are the expected turnaround times for this program right now, FACTAP?
That's a good question. I guess it would depend depending on the application and what's involved in the application, or what the application is applying for, and what they want to do. So pretty high. If you want, I could try to look at the applications that were submitted and see what the wait times were, and bring that information back.
Somerset South Drive.
Thank you, Chair, that'd be great.
Okay.
And I know for a fact that there's a pilot project out there right now of solar panels and a canopy on an oyster boat. In my previous life, I was involved in developing it, so I'm just wondering, is this program you were just speaking about separate from, like, we already have a pilot, so is there a specific pilot program for that?
I've never heard of it before, to be honest. If somebody did that, they must have did that on their own, because it was never, when I had the conversation with the Shelf Association, they never mentioned any previous person doing this or anything like that.
Somerset South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. It was actually funded through the FACTAP program itself, so it came through your department. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
O'Leary Inverness.
Minister, just a few little questions here, just maybe more around the Ellerslie Fisher Station, which I know is kind of a split arrangement there with the Shellfish Association, but I know there was some work done on the wharf there. Could you maybe give me an update on what work was done or how much money was spent on that, and the provincial money, and then if there's going to be any more?
That was actually done, I'll remember, through rural development. But I know that they had to fix some of the ladders, some of the actual main boards that went up the sides.
Yeah.
That was to be replaced, but then they found after they got in there that some of the main beams that support them laterals needed to be replaced, so they had to come back and submit another application or amendment to the application. We approved it and got all that stuff done. One thing that was approved to do at the very end of the wharf, at the L, there was a part that's raised, and they wanted to have that fixed, but they felt it more important to fix back than that. So we're looking at that other part now for this upcoming budget through rural development. So
I guess my question is that, I mean, now the province is into fixing up wharves. And is there any arrangement that you can make with the federal government? I mean, federal government is usually responsible for all of those wharves, but in this particular case, it's owned by the Shellfish Association, and they seem to be not able to come up with the funding to maintain the wharf at a regular intervals, I guess.
You've raised a very good question. Back a year ago, I started conversations with the federal government on developing an Atlantic infrastructure plan called Supporting Marine Infrastructure. That has been put before the federal government. I was hoping to go before the Finance Committee to help DFO push that forward, and it's sort of basically been stalled right now because of COVID and the ability to do that. But I can tell you that the department, we are taking over 3 wharfs in the province due to them being divested. We wanted to ensure that our fisheries and our aquaculturists had access to the water, and we felt it prudent to take them over. We're in the final stages right now of ensuring that the engineers sign off on the appropriate work to make sure that are serviceable for the next 20 years. And that's being worked out right now. Then they'll become owned by the Province of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy.
O'Leary Inverness.
Would it make some sense for you to take this wharf over then? I mean, just I know it's owned by the Shellfish Association and you're funding it, but maybe it makes more sense for the province to own it. That if you're going to have 3, you might as well have 4.
I really don't want to take over wharfs, I'll be honest with you. I see it as we need to have further conversations with the federal government to ensure that they put forth the appropriate money into DFO and small craft harbors to maintain these harbors more, even though in the case that wharf was taken over by the Shellfish Association.
O'Leary Inverness.
Well, I guess my point would be is that, you know, if you're going to have 3, you might as well have 4. And there's probably some synergy in doing repairs and tendering things out when you can do a bit more as a volume basis. And I would find it hard to believe that once the Shellfish Association is aware that the province owns wharves, that it may be looking to try to divest over to you. So I'm just saying that it's something to be prepared about. And it can be an issue in trying to maintain these things. But anyway, I want to move on to just another piece of infrastructure that's down there that's owned by the Shellfish Association. It's the Oyster Museum.
Yeah.
And you were up, and I really appreciate your help and support with the Canadian Potato Museum. But another one of the museums in my district is the PEI Shellfish Museum. And I know they've had some discussions with trying to modernize and renovate it. I think their numbers were abysmal last year, like all museums were. Is there any plans that you might have to support improving or making that a better product from a tourism perspective?
Thank you. That would actually fall under the part of the budget under rural development.
I know, yeah.
But I would be willing to look at an application. That's not a an issue.
O'Leary Inverness?
And I guess one of my other ones on that whole site, and it's the issue around Paws Creek. And I encountered this just when I became a minister, and the issue is there was quite a siltation problem there that came from the peat moss plant on a storm. And that was really kind of one of the main beds that was established for rearing oysters in that area. Is there any plans to do something to maybe desilt that, or to dredge it, or to try it? Because I remember the time when I was there, you could stick a pole down and go down about 5 feet. You know, it just it was quite a mess there in that regard. But I'm not blaming anybody. It's just one of those things that happens. But
I can tell you that has not been brought up to me in the last while by the Shellfish Association, but I think that would cause we'd have to have quite a conversation with the Department of Environment and Climate Change, also with DFO, you know, around what it would actually entail to do some heavy desilting in that area, but also to remedy what's actually causing it in the first place, to ensure that we correct the problem once and for all.
O'Leary Inverness? From my understanding, I'll say in general the problem has been somewhat corrected. I mean, it was just a storm event that caused a lot of runoff, and it came down a long ways. And you have to understand the issue with peat moss is not like soil. It's very light and fluffy, and it'll float. So it floated a long ways, and I would say the only real solution there would be dredging it. And I mean, we do dredge harbors. We do, dredging is a practice that's considered environmentally workable, and so I just kind of would encourage you to maybe take a little more information about that and see if there is a solution that can be done, and see what can be done to move forward in that. And I guess my final, or I won't say my final question, but you mentioned the muscle genome program there earlier. Any idea on what the outcome of that was? So you've gotten the money spent, and my understanding when I was minister, it was about trying to do some research around the genetic makeup of a muscle and determine what the best muscle would be to last the longest and get the best meat content. And it was really about, and if you look at muscles, they're all different colors and shapes and things of that nature. So it was to try to get down to what's the most optimal muscle. And I'm just wondering if there's been any outcome of that research.
No, the final reports aren't in yet, but the information and feedback I've had back from them and from our staff is that they're progressing well. They are learning a lot, and hopefully we'll get some good results and ideas in the near future.
O'Leary Inverness. And my final question then is just regarding access to fisheries and access to shores. As obviously we're dealing with some climate change issues, and there's been a number of locations where fishermen, to launch their boats out. Has there been? Did you spend all your money on that particular section, and how much money are you planning for coming year? I'm not sure what section this is. I'm not sure if it's some with transportation too. But.
Yeah, as you know, previously the budget was quite low, and we did have that increase. But right now we are doing a capacity study within the department on our access points. We will be talking to the Shellfish Association with that to try to understand, what areas are more important than other areas, and how can we come up with a long-term solution to maintain them.
O'Leary Inverness.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some good discussion with the Department of Transportation. I mean, I know I've got, one of the policies I believe was that it had to be within a kilometer from beach access, but the problem is the way our road structures go, sometimes a kilometer within a water course maybe quite a bit longer to drive around, and once again, from a greenhouse gas perspective and stuff, the quicker that we get people on the water and get them to their leases, or the public fishery locations, the better. So I just know one of the issues I was dealing with was Bannerman Road, and there was access. It wasn't that necessarily a lot of fishermen were using it, but because it was within the kilometre where the fishery station was located, they wouldn't look at doing any funding for that. I don't think we're talking big money by any means, but it's just something that I sort of look at as ways to improve access to our waterways and to, once again, save greenhouse gases in transportation costs.
I guess I could end with, I think as we look at our access points right now, or the little internal study we're doing and review of these, that we hope to come up with some solutions in the future.
Okay, well, thanks. Sid, shall the section carry?
Carried.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. Just one more question here. So the Aquaculture and Fisheries Research, Innovation and Growth Program, that was undersubscribed as well. I'm just wondering if there's any plans to improve or any strategies planned to improve the uptake of that program?
Well, I can tell you in last year, there was 10 projects that were supported in that project. So again, it's basically, if the need is there and the applications come in, then of course, then we will try to support them. So it's application based or project based.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So were there any applications that did not receive funding, like that were submitted, but
don't think so.
Or did all the applications that were sent in receive funding?
I'd have to bring that back to you, I don't remember.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
That's all. Thank you.
Shall the section carry?
Carried.
Total aquaculture, $2,062,100. Shall it carry?
Carried.
Carried.
Rural and regional development. Appropriations provided for collaboration with community and business leaders across Prince Edward Island, as well as existing development organizations to ensure coordinated approaches to regional growth opportunities. Administration, $29,000. Equipment, $4,000. Material supplies and services, $14,400. Professional services, $10,000. Salaries, $866,100. Travel and training, $35,300. Grants, $2,850,900. Total rural and regional development, $3,809,700. Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So how much funding is allocated for the rural growth initiative in 21 and 22?
Get the exact number there.
The allocation has not changed from the previous years. It's $2,285,900.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So it looks like last year only one project was approved in the inclusive communities sort of line of this initiative, and I'm wondering why that is. Why there's only one project under inclusive communities.
Well, as you must appreciate, this is a program that's based on applications submitted by the public or nonprofit groups or so on, right? So we accept any application. So if any group wants to put in an application for inclusive properties or that kind of idea, then they can submit the application. But I believe we only had the one application last year.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
And can you tell me a bit about what you would see as the benefits of supporting and perhaps finding ways to encourage communities to put forward applications that would be under this heading of inclusive communities?
Well, that's one thing I try to do, is I try to promote this program as much as possible across the whole island. And I've constantly been meeting with different groups and explaining, trying to encourage them to submit applications. So any project that we can do to make things more inclusive for people, I think that's the way we should go. We want as many people out there, many of the islanders, taking advantage of what's there as much as possible. So I guess the big thing is to continue to encourage groups to look under them lenses when they put projects forward.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I do think that's very important, yes, to encourage and support communities, particularly with the lens of inclusivity. So I'm wondering, you said that you have already done that. So, and it didn't take, there weren't a lot of applications yet. So what more do you plan to do? Because this seems like a very important part of this that is just being missed.
I think a good first step would be ensuring that we're, providing good information to the public and our nonprofit groups or these associations out there, and educating on what how the department works or how that program works, and making sure we ask them, look at it through the lens of making things more inclusive than what they are now.
And Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So are you familiar with the municipal nominee program? Currently, I believe it's under development by the federal government.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Valley Sherbrooke.
So this program is where municipalities will be able to nominate newcomers similar to PNP, and I'm just wondering, are there any plans to change the Inclusive Communities program to take into account this new federal program when it comes in? That might be
Well,
one
that's a good
avenue.
point.
Okay.
I would definitely look into that and see if we can adapt to it or how we could enhance it, yes, for sure.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Yeah, okay, that's good to hear. I mean, we've seen that some communities have had difficulty taking part in some of these sorts of immigration programs because they don't necessarily have the administrative capacity, particularly, smaller municipalities, to manage the applications. So I'm wondering, will small rural municipalities be able to use this program to help them develop that capacity so that they could fully participate in this upcoming federal opportunity?
I'll give the staff full marks here, because our staff that we have in rural development, and even will carry over into municipal affairs, they're very willing to work with small municipalities to ensure that they can apply for grants or bring proposals forward. And I think in the last month, I think I've reached out and had meetings with at least 4 or 5 different communities, and trying to promote programs and the ability of our department to help them with programs or applying for a program. So if that answers the question, I think that, we will be there to support as much as possible. And we will be the ones going to them, ensuring that they know what the program's available.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. That's good to hear, and I do encourage you to have a look at this federal program, the municipal nominee program, and if there is a way to support municipalities through the Inclusive Communities Fund to be able to apply for that other funding, I think that could really have a great impact. So thank you for taking that under consideration. Can you elaborate more, or elaborate on the nonprofit community initiative and what you expect to see in this fiscal year under that initiative?
Yeah, that's our, if you remember back last year, we had 4 different rural community councils across the island, and we rolled that back into one. So that group is up and working. They're having great success in meeting and coming up with different ideas. So that $200,000 is part of a commitment by the government to provide funding over $1 million fund for supporting rural initiative or rural communities in different ways that our programs don't apply to. So this is the first step of putting that money forward.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
And can you elaborate a bit more on what you mean by great success? So what are some of the successes that have come out of this?
A great team was enabled across the island, and we made we took a very serious look at making sure it was diverse, and that it encompassed the different areas of the province, all different locations, different walks of life, and now they're building on what information was gathered from the previous councils and trying to come up with ways or initiatives or a concept plan on helping rural PEI continue to grow and thrive.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
And Minister, what is your role in working with this group? How does that work?
That's a good question. Actually, I read their, I'm briefed on what the results of the meetings are, and I myself, I think, since I'm being informed, I've attended 3 of their meetings, and I've expressed to them that, anytime they want, I think it's a priority, a direction priority. So anytime that they want to meet or have information provided to them, then we'll provide it. But we have dedicated staff from the department that are working with them to assist them. So our staff are hearing what they're talking about firsthand as the meetings are happening.
Tyne Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Yeah, just one more question. So when you say dedicated staff, so how many staff are working with this group and how much of their time is spent with this group?
Well, the meetings are in the evenings, honorable member. You know, so the last meeting I attended, there was, I think we had 3 staff members there that evening, listening and taking notes and working with them. So depending on the night and availability of staff, but there's staff very much engaged and there with them.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
That's all for now, Chair. Thank you.
Shall the section carry?
Carried.
Total rural and regional development, $3,809,700. Shall it carry?
Carried.
Municipal affairs. Appropriations provided for the oversight of municipal government, advisory services and training, and including equalization grants and municipal service tax credits for municipalities. Administration, $10,000. Equipment, $3,000. Materials and supplies, $9,800. Professional services, $84,000. Salaries, $662,900. Travel and training, $7,300. Grants, $30,618,900. Total municipal affairs, $31,395,900. Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I'm just wondering if you could if we could walk through some of the supports for the smaller rural municipalities. So many of the programs, my understanding is based on population. How does that work for those smaller rural municipalities that don't have many residents in it? How does that work for them, and is there any way that you can level out the support for the smaller ones?
So that's a really good question, honorable member, because one thing I've said right from the very start, I want to ensure these small communities survive, and I want to make sure that they keep their identity and have be out there. I think they're very important. So of course, as you know, we changed the shared service model, and which is allowing now communities to share some services and not be constrained by the first MGA. So now we've had that, made them, and I appreciate you supporting us on that, so that these small communities can keep their identity. But when it comes to like planning and stuff like that, we provide 90% of the supports to them. We've got dedicated staff that will, help municipalities with their ideas and with their planning and with their bylaw changes and stuff like that. One thing we did do is we extended the planning requirement of the MGA to 2023. So like we're taking them steps to ensure that they're viable, right?
Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. One of the challenges that's been identified is the election process, right, for the smaller ones, because you have to have advance voting. So it's 2 days of advance voting, and you have to have election day. And so understandably, for a municipality with 50,000 people or a province with 160,000 people, that makes sense. But when you have a municipality that's only got 200 people, it's a very big cost to those municipalities. Have you had any conversations with Elections PEI or the municipalities on that cost?
Yeah. So you are right. It can be a big cost. So I know in one area of the province we've got a few communities that have to have bylaws, but they're going to have one central advance poll for the 3 different areas, and share the expense of one returning officer, and like that kind of stuff. So stacking things and dividing it between the municipalities to reduce the cost and the burden on them.
Oh.
Mermaid Stratford.
And that's something that you're working, that's in place now?
Yeah, we're working now, yeah.
Has that been communicated out to the smaller rural, or to the municipalities? Like, would, like for instance, Hazelbrook and Alexander be able to do that? And has that been communicated to them?
Yeah, we're willing to have that conversation. And as they reach out to us and ask how they can go through the process of what's required, then we're suggesting these ideas. Or that type of model of doing that. So, I'll have the conversation. If Alexander wants to have the conversation, Hazelbrook, and sure, we'll come, honorable member, and see how we can help them with that.
Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. But the challenge is why don't we just make that known across the province instead of
Yeah.
requiring each individual municipality to find that information out and then meet with you individually if we just
That's a good point.
create a process flow of what they have to go through
Yeah.
in order to be able to arrange that. Is that something that the department can do?
Yeah, we could look at that immediately for you.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate that, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, Mermaid Stratford?
But I'll say to honorable member, you know, anytime a municipality has reached out to the department to want to meet, like, we're there within days, and that will continue. That's my direction. I think that's my commitment to the 59 municipalities. And like I know in one case, I'm thinking about 2 weeks ago, I had a call on a Sunday night. The little council was a little bit confused or complex to where they were going to go. And we had a meeting set up with them on 2 days later, 3 days later. So that will continue by this department.
Mermaid Stratford?
Thank you, Chair, and I don't I know that's what you do, Minister, and I know that you've met with that council a number of times, and I know that members of the council have been in your office a number of times. The challenge is not, getting that final answer so that they can actually come back to their residents to provide it, and they haven't gotten there. And I understand doing things on a per municipality basis, but I think that there's so much more value that if, you call them all in and ask them what their problems are, or, if you actually, when they do identify these issues, that we develop something that can be put out to all of them so that you don't have to do each and every municipality separately.
Good suggestion. Good suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Mermaid Stratford?
So when a municipality is at the point where they are struggling based on, generating enough tax dollars, because the only way that really some of them have to generate those tax dollars is through property taxes, what are the options for them? Like for next step, what's the option if they're not surrounded by incorporated communities? What's that next step for them?
Well, I think that's a good question. So I've had conversations with a few municipalities about talking of course, I've said shared services when they don't share a common boundary. They're separated in between by an unincorporated area. So there is municipalities that are having them conversations with neighbors that could be a little bit away on how they can share accounting, town office, answering the phone, storage of records, that kind of thing. So those conversations are going on. But I think as we're very open to try to provide them models or ways that they can continue to survive and provide the services they need for the future. Now, one thing I am working on is should we take a look at Community A, will say, as 150 people or 69 people, and they don't have no infrastructure or they don't provide any services but accepting the fire dues, right? So how can we transition them maybe into some kind of new sub-form or some type of nonprofit group or something, so that they can continue to act as a municipality in some ways or means, but operate within the means that they have the ability to generate revenue for.
Mermaid Stratford?
Thank you, Chair. So that's interesting. So kind of another tier within the MGA. Is that something that you're actively working on
That's
right now?
I'm actually working on, yeah.
And is
Mermaid
that,
Stratford?
sorry, Chair, and is that something that you will take out to the communities to ask what they need and how that would be structured?
That's right.
Mermaid Stratford?
Thank you, Chair. And do you have a timeline on that?
I'd like to have, we've got the concept ideas now we're working on. I can tell you I had a conversation with a chartered accountant the other day on financial reporting and them requirements, and maybe possibly the ability to look at some kind of different model. If you have a budget, we'll say, of X, I'm just throwing these numbers out there, the budget could be somewhere in the area of maybe $30,000 or $50,000, and only do maybe 20 transactions a year. And this is, you take your gas tax money, whatever, and you pass over to somebody else. So there's a way we could incorporate that when it comes to the review or the reporting of that budget back to municipal affairs, or to their accountants, right?
Mermaid Stratford.
But to answer your question, I'll remember a timeline. I've got a concept idea I want to have done by the end of this month, the 1st of April, thereabouts. And then we can start conversations with our municipalities after that and further partners on, is this something we need to look at for the future?
Mermaid Stratford.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I look forward to hearing more on that, for sure. Last time that we were discussing the budget, I brought up that some municipalities in other jurisdictions are required to have performance audits completed. Have you looked into that at all? I know that was something that you had said that, that sounds interesting. Have you looked into it at all, or are you going to look into it?
To be honest with you, I still have it back of my mind, but I haven't really divulged, gone into it too depth. I think it has to do with, as we look at the MGA and as it continues to roll out, we have extended some of the timelines. So I think it's all part and parcel with that.
Mermaid Stratford.
I'm good, thank you, Chair.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. In the Municipal Government Act, it says in Section 180, that a council may pass bylaws and provide services for municipal purposes respecting, and the one I'm interested in is B, municipal utilities, public utilities, facility works and improvements on private and public land. Do you feel that this would allow the City of Summerside to provide electric service to every one of its residents within its boundaries?
I would have to look at it, Honourable Member, more in depth. I'm very aware of the situation in Summerside and how they look at their utility and for the future. And there are agreements or partnerships between Maritime Electric and them as to what areas provided electricity by either partner. So we have to look at the Electrical Power Act and, which supersedes the Municipal Government Act, or does that actually, it's a complicated matter, Honourable Member.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware that that's a complicated matter. It's been going on a long time, longer than the Municipal Government Act has been in place. But you were at a meeting that we had with Council, and this was brought up quite some time ago, so surely you've looked into it since then. Have you got an update for us on?
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for further information actually from the City of Summerside. They said they were going to put together a business plan or some kind of information or case package to it, and that's what I think was suggested in that meeting, and I have not received anything to this date from the City of Summerside.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, so you're waiting for a business plan from the City of Summerside so you can take action?
Yep, my understanding, when we met that day, you were there, a couple of the other honourable members were there, and we suggested and agreed that, I'm quite sure it was agreed that they should put a case study together or some kind of business plan together that be presented before government.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. So did you receive the letter that the City of Summerside has sent in since? I was CC'd on it. I know the Minister of Energy was. I'm not certain.
I don't recall it, Honourable Member. But I think it also starts first, there needs to be that conversation with the City of Summerside and Maritime Electric as the utility provider for the area. So I think the conversation needs to happen between them two partners, first.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. So at that meeting, Summerside mentioned that Maritime Electric won't even sit at the table with them. So based on this Municipal Government Act here that says that they are allowed to provide service in there, and there seems to be some sort of issue that needs to be worked out between the Minister of Energy's Electric Power Act and the Minister of Communities Municipal Government Act. Would you commit to bringing Summerside and Maritime Electric to the table to work this out?
Well, I can't. I think they should. I don't think government should be forcing any two groups to come together. I would encourage them to come together and have the conversation. I believe, if I recall, I think the legal opinion I received is that the Electric Power Act actually supersedes the Municipal Government Act as it applies to this.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to take that as a no, because Summerside has been trying to get Maritime Electric to the table on this, and the answer has been no. So you're not willing to?
I'm not aware of them conversations, Honourable Member.
Well, you were at the meeting, Minister.
Well, I think that, no, but has there been conversations between then and now is the question I'm asking.
Summerside South Drive.
Between then and now, they submitted a letter requesting that government do what
I haven't seen the letter.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. I tabled that the other day, Minister.
Okay, I haven't read it.
So, yeah, it's out there for the public to see. I'd encourage you to have a look at it and take
sure.
some action on behalf of the City of Summerside.
Yep, no problem.
Summerside South Drive, or is that?
That's fine, Chair.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. Is a safe restart agreement funding reflected under this section?
Yes.
It would be in the COVID funding, which is in
Yep.
central government.
Tyne Valley
It's
Sherbrooke,
not,
sorry.
it doesn't show up in
Doesn't
this
show up here,
department,
okay.
no.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, so the budget includes 84,000 for consultant services, including for CAOs. So last year, municipalities introduced their own access to information policies, and in 2019, some municipalities came under the FOIP Act, is my understanding. Is that?
Mary?
I don't know. I'm wondering if the province is providing any support to municipalities so they understand their obligations under the Freedom of Information and Protections of Privacy Act.
Yes, they are.
What sort of supports? Sorry.
Well, the support is that we provide them any information that they want regarding that. We provide the information back based on the question they're asking.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So, okay, so do municipalities have record retention obligations then under the Archives and Records Act as well?
Yes, they do now. I think that was passed in the House back a year ago or so.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So making sure that they're meeting those obligations then, is that also something that you are supporting them in?
Yes.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So, and when you, so maybe you can elaborate just a bit more then on what that support looks like.
Well, one model that was suggested, and we had a conversation with the group, was that a central depository for municipal records. So some municipalities, of course, they're limited in their capacity and infrastructure and ability to hold records properly. So we've had the conversation with a group, with the Development Corporation, on maybe they could set up a central depository where a municipality could deposit their records to ensure that they're safe, kept, and stored.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, so there's been a conversation, so, I mean, are there any timelines for this to progress?
Well, from right now, we haven't had any indication, or I haven't had any indication that a municipality is having a problem with retaining or storing of records.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. And just, what, I guess, can you clarify what has been done then to ensure that all municipalities are aware of these responsibilities and the complexity of them and the full scope of these new responsibilities?
I can bring that answer back from the department.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So in the early days of the pandemic, a lot of municipalities, in my understanding, were concerned about how they would cover losses in municipal revenue and whether they'd be able to balance their budgets in 21-22. Is this an issue you've seen for the upcoming fiscal year, or anything that has been expressed to you as an ongoing concern?
The loss of revenue, of course, was brought up in the first stages of COVID and so on. But we don't replace lost revenue. But the Safe Restart program provided them funds to adapt to what was required with COVID.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So there's been no indication that there's any necessary or any requirement beyond what was provided by the Safe Restart program for the province to also be supported. Like, that's been sufficient?
There's been no request, honorable member.
No request.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
All right. Thank you, Chair. I'll stop there for now.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. So I just quickly looked up the email that I was CC'd on when it was submitted back on February 5th, Minister, and you are on the list there, so you do have a copy of this in your inbox if you'd like to
Okay,
have a
I'll
look at
check it
that.
out there, honorable member. Yeah.
Yeah, that would probably be
Sure.
a good idea. Within it, they specifically ask for your help and appreciate all of the words if you had.
And if you want to meet on it, we can meet up. That's no problem.
Well,
Summerside South Drive.
That'd be great, but what I really want is for Maritime Electric, the province, and the city to sit down and have this worked out to everyone's agreement.
I can
which
bring
is
that
what
forward.
Summerside's been after for
I
quite
can bring
some time.
that suggestion forward. That's no problem.
You agree to that?
I agree with that. Yeah.
Summerside South Drive.
That's fine, thank you.
Charlottetown Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair. Last March, the City of Charlottetown announced it was going to discuss in an open session the report it commissioned to study short-term rentals after their lawyers told them they couldn't do it in closed session. What's the department doing to ensure that municipalities are complying with the MGA and not holding discussions in camera when they are not supposed to?
That's a good question, honorable member. I've had no complaints, I will say, or any information brought forward to me that is happening. But if If we get a report that that was happening, then of course we would pass word to Municipal Affairs, and then they would investigate or take the appropriate action or ask the appropriate questions on that matter.
Charlotte Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps, so would there be a process to do that, though? Because this actually did happen through the process of public disclosure, and it was actually discussed in the city meeting itself. So I'm not, perhaps if we could find out how that would need to be reported.
Thanks, Alderman Member. If you want, I'll reach into the department and find out what the actual policy is or the procedure, and then I can provide that to you.
Charlotte Belvedere.
Thank you. I would greatly appreciate that. Obviously, the concern is we don't know how often these things are happening until they're brought out into the light. But so the policy would be very helpful. Another question, Chair. Is there any support from the department to assist municipalities with planning issues?
Well, we provide supports to on planning issues as they arise, but I think right now we're providing 90% of the supports when it comes to planning within the department.
Charlotte Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, we are hearing concerns, particularly around the municipality of Charlottetown, that there's a lot of delay is being put down to lack of resources for planning and those activities. So it's a real concern that, if it is about resources, is that something that they need assistance with?
Yeah, that's a very good question or point. One thing I think the province is experiencing a lot of development across the island. I've just been informed in the last week that actually our senior municipal planner is leaving her position and going back to another province. So we will be looking for immediately temporary for her, and then also looking at a second position to try to clear up the backlog or assist in them development plans as they come forward from the Department of Agriculture over to us.
Charlotte Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair, and I can appreciate the challenge, because we know that from a planning perspective, it's not just the actual work, but it's the expertise to do the work, and that can be a real bottleneck. I had asked the Minister the other day in the House around, again, also sort of where the responsibility lies, and that is another layer of complexity that makes it difficult for not just regular members of the public, but people who are within the system to know how and where to go to get answers. One of the things that we had talked about briefly was the respect to the work to research and implement inclusionary zoning. Chair, I was wondering if the Minister would be able to speak to sort of where that is in the context of planning and moving forward.
Yeah. We're hoping that, of course, the Planning Act falls under the Department of Agriculture and Land. We're sort of like a check and balance system within our department, but we're hoping that, and I foresee that as the Department of Lands and Environment bring out the recommendations from the land matters, that we'll be able to make some changes or recommend some changes that would streamline that whole conversation. I can tell you that one conversation I've had within the department over the last year was, does the Department of Municipal Affairs actually need to be involved in that stage? Could that be moved over to lands and keep it all in-house instead of going across the department? So that conversation has started.
Charlotte Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair. And I think the reason, the context for not just the question previously, but to bring it up again here, Minister, is about, from a budgetary perspective, that we know that the administration of the Municipal Governance Act and the accountability for that does sit with the MGA, and that aspect of it does sit under your department. And that if the municipalities are already struggling from a planning perspective or are not able to keep up, and then we want to bring in new zoning and pieces that require quite a lot of shift in thought and direction, they're going to need support for that. And we're already kind of, unfortunately, something like inclusionary zoning, there is a feeling that we're already behind the ball on that. So it's really from a budgetary perspective, is that something that we are thinking about or you're thinking about within your department?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a well-sought profession right now, right? You know, like trying to find municipal planners or them type of people with that type of skill, it's a challenge, right? And as I said a second ago, we had a great staff member in play, and this lady has now decided to move back to her home province, which I can understand that. So it's a challenge, but we are having them conversations right now and how we can streamline the process or how we can make sure we get good quality people in there that can get it moving.
Charlotte Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair. I know we've spoken in other departments about sort of, especially when you're doing something which is really going to bring about substantive change, or where you have a backlog, or where there's a pressure. We've talked about investing in recruitment and retention. And so in terms of, it may not be the sexiest thing in the world, but planning is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Has that been something that your department has considered, that recruitment and retention strategy for planners is as important for long-term good outcomes as perhaps not as important as doctors, but there's a similarity in that need of where if it gets to the point where we're in crisis, then we're not just not moving forward, we're actually losing opportunity.
Yeah, good point, eh? But I can say, I am aware that I think the city of Charlottetown too, they're short on planners right now, or they're down in staff, so it's, that compounds the problem too. And then if we're down in staff, then we were actually starting to get some of the backlog cleared and moving forward, but now, say with this lady moving, it's going to slow the process down a little bit. So I understand what you're saying with a retention program and how can we move forward. Interesting.
Okay.
Charlotte Belvedere.
Thank you. And Minister, I appreciate when we have this opportunity to sort of speak, in perhaps a less confrontational way about some of the challenges, because there are really difficult questions that we have to ask. So I am going to bring back a difficult question, which is about short-term rentals. And the context, Minister, is that the city of Charlottetown, as the primary municipality, the largest municipality in the province, is not necessarily abiding by its own bylaws.
Okay.
And in context of but then I'll be less soft. They are not abiding by their bylaws. They're refusing to hold public meetings on short-term rentals, despite being able to hold public meetings on other issues. They're also not actually enforcing the existing bylaws that are that are approved and in practice right now regarding owner-occupied accommodations and tourist accommodations. What is the role of the provincial government in addressing these concerns when a municipality is not doing or enforcing the bylaws that it is required by law to enforce?
I'll be very blunt. Municipalities across this island are required to adhere to the bylaws and the laws of the province. And any complaint by an individual of that not taking place, they'll be investigated by the Department of Municipal Affairs.
Charlotte Belvedere.
Thank you for that clarity, Minister. I so appreciate that. We talk a lot about consultation, and consultation does, I think we've agreed over the last many days and months, it looks different to different people. But when the citizens of the municipality are not allowed to express their opinion, I think we could probably agree that that is not okay. And as a representative for Charlottetown, who in a provincial context, I have to be able to speak to that. It's really important that I can come here and have a space where I can talk about how bad it is that people who happen to live in Charlottetown don't have the same right and access to have their voices heard.
Yeah.
So, Minister, I will be following up with you
Sure.
on that, and I really appreciate the clarity on the answer. Another question that's come through from a constituency perspective, very specific to Charlottetown, is regarding the funding for firefighters. I know firefighters and the work that's happening there. Charlottetown firefighters have been asking for more funding to expand the number of firefighters, which hasn't been increased in terms of the paid roles that are covered, and so they don't feel they have enough firefighters on staff to properly and safely respond to fires, in that space between when they attend and then the volunteers get there. Has that been brought to your attention, Minister?
I am aware of that honourable member, but I would say that would fall under the realm of justice and public safety, and the minister attached.
Charlottetown Belvedere.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I'll put that on the list and bring back to that minister when he's back on the hot seat. I think I am good for there for now. Thank you.
Shall that section carry?
Carried.
Total municipal affairs, 31,395,900. Shall it carry?
Carried.
Total Department of Fisheries and Communities, 40,855,600. Shall it carry?
Carried.
The hour has been called.
That was Mr. Chair, I move that the Speaker take the chair and the chair report progress and beg leave to sit again.
Shall it carry?
Carry.
Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Committee of the Whole House having under consideration the grant of supply to Her Majesty, I beg leave to report that the committee has made some progress and begs leave to sit again. I move the report of the committee be adopted.
Shall it carry?
Sounds good. Do you want me to second you? Do you want me to second her today? Okay. Think he's going to look at me, or he's just going to wait for me to step down? Okay.
The honourable member from Morel Dona and the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the member from Montague-Kilmere, that this House adjourn until March 30th at 1 o'clock in the p.m.
Shall it carry? Wash that.